Welcome to The Breakdown with Brad Corp and Becky, a weekly podcast that breaks down politics, policy, and current affairs. I'm Becky Scher.
And I'm Michael Broadcorp.
It is here. We are pleased to be live streaming tonight on one of our favorite days, primary election day. Polls are just moments away from closing here in Minnesota, and there's a lot at stake for both Democrats and Republicans. So while it might be a while until we fully know the results for a variety of races, we are here to get into what we know when we know it. And so for those of you tuning in live, thank you for spending this wonderful holiday with us. Please be sure to tweet your thoughts, questions, and insights to @BBBreakPod, and we'll do our best to incorporate them in the show as we go. For those tuning in after the fact, we still care what you think too. So feel free to let us know what we got right or wrong, but mostly right, I'm sure. We are excited to be joined by various guests through the night to help us break down results as they happen. Controversy or drama that you might be hearing, and all the good, bad, and ugly that we get from this glorious day. Starting with Billy Grant. Welcome, Billy.
Thanks. Great to be back.
We are heavily caffeinated and excited to be here for the next couple of hours. So thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. I mean, starting with everybody got out and voted, right?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying it's always fun doing a live show. Forgetting to turn off your alarm. Who also had their alarm on in the background?
It was my dryer.
That's fantastic. So my phone went off and then your dryer.
Start.
And then Billy looks like he's, just got off of. Anyways, thanks for being here, Billy. This is our first live show.
I'm happy to do it. It's an honor.
You.
It's an honor. Happy to be here.
All right.
Someone just asked our first question. Whose washing machine is that?
That'd be mine.
Great job, Becky. Fantastic job.
It ended like 2 minutes before we started, so I didn't think it was going to make noise. Apparently there is just in case you didn't notice.
That's great.
But, it's the long-awaited day. Lots of excitement coming up tonight. So we started off the day knowing that more than 206,000 absentee and mail ballots had already been accepted as of Monday morning, far exceeding midterm primary early vote record of 155,000 set in 2022. So some are speculating that we are going to potentially have around or maybe beat the turnout for a non-presidential year. What are your guys' thoughts? Are we going to do that? Are we going to break through the 925,554 that was set in 2018?
Billy, take it away.
I don't know necessarily. I think it could happen. And the Democrats' Senate race would probably be the main driver of that. If it does happen, I would expect that would be the primary driver of that turnout. So that's what I would be watching in terms of overall turnout numbers. And, I think there'll still be people who turn out on the Republican side. I just don't think it'll be on that level to help break that record. So I think the Republicans will see a slight bump, but I think the Democrats will probably have a pretty significant turnout bump.
So if you were to put a percentage on what your guesstimate is of how the breakdown will work out in turnout, is it 60-40? Is it 70-30 Democrats? What's your thought?
Yeah, 65-35 feels about right. Maybe split that right down the middle.
I tell you, what a night.
We're going to start the podcast by reminding everybody to mute their phones and other devices. This is just what happens here because
that was a great
podcast, and we have real lives, and our phones and dryers go off, so we're dealing with that. I got out and voted today. They said turnout at our place was a little bit higher. I went this afternoon, cast my ballot on that R side, and it was exciting. I always like to get out.
What was the turnout in the DFL primary for you?
At my location?
In the DFL primary, what was your vote in the DFL primary? How was your turnout?
I didn't vote in the DFL primary. Nice try there. But I should ask you if you know anything about that.
I voted, as I disclosed before, much to the chagrin of some of our listeners. I proudly voted in the Republican primary.
Yeah.
So I did vote. My ballot is private, but one vote I will acknowledge proudly and loudly is I voted for Scott Jensen for governor, Scott Jensen for attorney general. No. Scott General for auditor in the primary over Republican endorsed Nate George. That'll be a race to watch tonight. And by the way, one of the people that's going to be joining us tonight is Jay Reeves, who is the Forward Independence, Forward Minnesota candidate for state auditor. But yes, I voted for Scott Jensen in the Republican primary for auditor.
I like Scott to win that one. I think that's a good vote.
Becky, any
Yeah,
votes you wish to disclose?
I
you
mean,
don't
yeah.
have to. You don't have to.
I can disclose many of them. I voted for Damith. I voted for Tafoya. I voted for a Jensen. Michael, by the way, I was questioning who you were going to support there. Your Twitter has been a little indifferent on who you support in that auditor's race. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. But no, that was when we both joined. Yeah, I had to. Both jointly set that Jensen there. And, we had him on after he made that switch. And I think he might be able to do it.
So a couple things. Going back to the primary question. So I think I think all of us generally believe that the Democrats are going to have more turnout in tonight's primary. Correct? We accept that premise, don't we? So the question is, what will be the Republican share of it? The overall turnout. And so in 2022, there was contested primaries. Republicans had roughly 42% of the primary total. In 2020, they had roughly 30%. In 2018, which is an election that a lot of people are drawing some comparisons to, Republicans only had 35% of the overall primary turnout. The closest margin in like the last 20 some years was the primary in 2014, where the Democrats, the Republicans had roughly 49% of the primary vote, and the Democrats
had, like, no primaries that year, right?
For the math majors at home, that would leave the balance of 51%. Becky, do you need to check your laundry anymore tonight?
I mean, I probably should shut my door.
Yes, I'm disappointed, and you can tell the number of people who recognized that sound, and I did not. So that's, I mean, I think the three of us generally believe the Democrats are going to have more voter turnout in their primary. The question is, what is the percentage between the Democrats and the Republicans?
Well, Billy said 65-35 was his guess. I'm going to go closer to like a 60-40. I think that some Republicans are going to turn out. You, Michael?
I think it's going to be, I don't think 60-40 is a bad guess. We'll see. I mean, it honestly should. I think it should be closer to, I think it honestly should be closer to, if Republicans want there to be, one of the things you can extrapolate from the primary results is the intensity and mood. And so I think Republicans have more contested races, I think, overall than the Democrats have. It's just that the Democrats ones, I think, are more well-funded, more organized, and so the turnout will be higher. But in reality, Republicans have a hotly contested race for governor, a hotly contested race for U.S. Senate, a hotly contested primary for auditor, and there's challenges. There's Secretary of State Mike Lindell has gone down the ticket and endorsed other candidates. The only one who doesn't have, he has a primary, but he doesn't have a contested primary, is Ron Schutz for Attorney General. So if you look at those races, there's a lot of reasons for Republicans to up their primary percentage ownership more than 60-40, but we'll see what it is.
Yeah, man, it really could be anything. If anything in the last few years have taught us, we don't really know anything and can't really predict anything. So we'll watch what it goes. I did look up in 2022, AP called Walz's governor's race. That was the general election. Dang it. I had wrong stats. Here I'm trying to provide fun facts of when they were calling the races, and my fun facts were poor. Do you think, what race do you guys think we wouldn't know by the end of this podcast? Do you think there's going to be any that are that close?
We're broadcasting until all the results come in, so we're not going to bed. There's not any race that won't be known. Because if it gets close, we can't shut it down.
Man, I've been up since 4:30 with this baby of mine. He is teething. He's got the flu. It has been a rough time.
That one key stat, that one key point that we learned is we don't have to refresh every minute. How often do we have to refresh now? Every 8 to 10?
Yep.
We should set a timer every 8 to 10. Or maybe on the spin cycle for your...
Oh, we got 0.1 in 4 precincts. It's starting, ladies and gents.
What do we have?
Well,
what do we have?
I don't even, I'm just on the main page that says 0.1%, so I don't even have that up yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing I was curious about the take. So we talked a few weeks ago about some of the Steve Simon, Secretary of State Steve Simon had raised concerns about the reduced federal security coordination surrounding elections. We saw some signs, we saw a press release come out that there were going to be some federal election observers. Have you guys heard anything about that going on today? Any issues or hiccups because of lack of coordination or more coordination, or anything that you guys got from Twitter or the ground? Because I haven't seen or heard much when it comes to that.
I heard it's happening, but I haven't seen any of the feds. I heard it's been happening, but that's it.
I think some of that stuff is probably overdue when you're looking at, states that are refusing to participate in sharing of voter rolls and the automatic registration and what just happened in New Jersey. So they're not there to do anything but observe and make sure that everything is going properly. And this, I think, as some people noted, this has happened before. It might be more unusual actually for the state to refuse to participate. So I think other states, including Michigan, participated recently. So I think this is sometimes more drama than it's actually should be, in my opinion. It's a pretty routine procedure.
That's the name of politics, isn't it? More drama than it should be.
I love that.
All right. Well, we'll keep refreshing here. If you got any thoughts, make sure to let us know in the comments here. We'll have some other people joining us soon. While we're waiting for some of these results, Billy, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Any race you want to throw out your predictions in? That Michael and I did this last week, but happy to take yours as we go.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty confident Tafoya will pull out an easy win in the Senate race for quite some time. I think Angie Craig will win as well on the Democrat side. So that would be my prediction there. And the governor's side, I think Lindell will pull out a narrow victory, perhaps less than he should have won by more if he had done some of the things Michael and I discussed a couple weeks ago, but I think he will still pull it out. And then I think Jensen will win in the auditor's race. The Secretary of State's the one I have no clue what'll happen. I don't think anyone knows who either of those two candidates are. So
Tad Jude?
No one knows who Tad Jude is.
Everybody knows who Tad Jude is. Can I tell
his name on the ballot, hoping one day he strikes gold?
First of all, he struck gold more than once. He was a DFL elected. He was DFL member. He was a DFL legislator, pro-life DFL legislator in the legislature, and then he was elected a judge. So he was a Hennepin County commissioner, and so
he's got a good career in public service. And part of the game with public service is sometimes you got to know when to hang it up. You got to know when your best days are past you.
I hope my best days are not past me. Let me tell my Tad Jude joke, or my Tad Jude reference. I mentioned this on the podcast last week that I would mention why I always call him Thaddeus. I was in a I was at a campaign event when I was working on the Boschwitz race. I think it was 96, and I ran into Dean Barkley prior to that being United States Senator Dean Barkley. And he made a comment about the race up in the sixth, and he said, I don't think Thaddeus is going to pull it off. And I said, Thaddeus, that is great. And so the reason I always called him Thaddeus is because of the reference from prior to him being United States Senator Dean Barkley.
What a fun little fact.
That's a great story.
Yeah. And again, that was prior to him being a United States Senator.
What else? What other? Do you have any good election night stories, primary night stories?
What do you guys do on election nights when you guys are working on campaigns? I know, Becky, you spent some time in your DFL primary today, voting in your DFL primary. What do you normally do on election day?
Back when I was working on campaigns, I had panic attacks. No, I typically would have a quick swig of whiskey, go sit and watch, and you gotta calm those nerves just a little bit, and have a spreadsheet up with, the places you need to win, where you need to win by a significant amount, and start tracking that and seeing if you're above or below. I know some races. Race I was in a couple years back was called within a minute and a half or something of polls being closed. It was pretty significant. I had another one that it was entering those first few precincts. We knew we got creamed. So it's usually a lot of that, and then you make sure your candidate goes and gives whatever speech they're going to give, and then rip it up. We've also had ones where election night you get sent back to the office because you got to get sent around to wherever to watch ballots if there's a recount. So it's been all of the above. Sometimes cried, I'm sure, many times.
Billy, how about you? Any election night superstitions, or what do you normally do on election night?
I try to relax on election day. I've played golf before if the weather's good, get a massage. There's really nothing you can do.
Jeez, get a massage.
I'm a media consultant now, man. I got all my ads are cut. Even when I was a general consultant, like there's only so much you can do on election day. You can have, if you don't have everything fully prepared by that point, it's on you. So like that's was always kind of my approach. I do have some good election night stories of candidates getting very worked up, and then us letting them know, hey, you're probably going to win. You just got to give it a couple hours. And then going and making that prediction on TV, and then next thing you know, we were ahead in a couple hours later. So sometimes you just got to calm everyone's nerves, like Becky said, and sometimes I remember for Tyler Kistner in 2022, we saw the Scott County numbers, and they just weren't good enough. It was like 65%, and the Dakota County numbers were like 72%. And we were actually winning the swing voters. I think we ended up winning the swing voters by like 4 or 5 points, but the margins red to blue just weren't good. So we were like, I don't think this is going to go our way, guys. We knew pretty early, honestly. So, if you've done all your work, you can rest pretty well on election day is always my philosophy. And then know what's going to happen is going to happen.
Billy, you're very fortunate in the sense that you've been out of state. So you've actually had some election night victories to celebrate, unlike many of us in recent decades in the state of Minnesota who have not had that opportunity. So that's probably refreshing to hear a bit.
It's refreshing. I mean, but honestly, the one thing I always tell people to inspire people is you learn a lot more from losing than you do winning. So, I mean, going up against the DFL and Ken Martin and Will Davis and all those guys, really taught me a lot. And I always valued the combat, so to speak. I mean, they're very good competitors and they do things very professionally. So I certainly learned a lot losing to those guys many times. And I think that prepared me well for other places in my career where I've been able to contribute and be successful. So it's all part of the journey, man. You just got to appreciate it and take those lessons with you. Cause if you're not losing races, just by volume, you're going to lose more than you're going to win. Right. So, but you have to take those losses and actually learn from them. That's the difference. And I think I pride myself on, I've been able to make some changes in how I do things and be a little bit more collaborative, less arrogant. And that's led to success. And, God usually, if you humble yourself, leads you to good things.
That's great. Thanks, Tony Robbins, for joining us tonight. Becky, you should retweet the latest results because we have updates.
Well, I do have a slight update. As of 3 minutes ago, Lisa.
Let's be clear on something. We're not going to read. So the Secretary of State's website has updates. Can we just read from the Secretary of State's website before we source people who, because I have 6 of 87 counties reporting.
I have the same.
So why don't you go through?
We have Schwarzy up by 4, 189 to 185 votes. We have Peggy Flanagan up by approximately 40-ish votes, 54% to 40%. We have, Dameth at 206, Lindell at 179, Qualls at 114. So we're at 39, 34, and 22% respectively. Amy Klobuchar's got 94%.
Told you it'd be like an election in North Korea.
Tad Jude, Wendy Phillips, neck and neck. They are separated by 17 votes at this point. So that's super exciting. Scott Jensen's at 62% over Nate George at
Excellent.
33.
Excellent.
Keith
Now-
Ellison's at 76%. Yeah. So
I think the Associated Press will be calling the auditor's race soon. Just joking.
is that you think that one's gonna be the first one?
I don't know. I think they'll probably call Klobuchar first.
Unfortunately, I don't know if that's their priority tonight, Michael. But
So a couple things. Election night story for me. First campaign was 96 that I was working on. I was an absolute spaz. And they called the race.
Nobody's surprised at all.
They called the race at like 8:01, 8:02. I was still like hanging up posters and I'm like, they already called it. And then 98, I was a spaz too, because that was the night Jesse Ventura beat us in the Coleman. Jesse Ventura beat us. I was working on then Mayor Norm Coleman's race. And then what I started to do in 2000 was I just decided, I said, look, no matter where I am on election night, I'm just going to try to like be in a quiet room, put a movie on, answer the phone, do desk work, do paperwork. And I've been doing that for the last, when I've been working on races or haven't been, I try to have a very mellow day on primary days and election days. So today I did some desk work and did some work for which, did some other desk work, administrative work, clients that, don't have anything to do with politics, and just kind of watched and see what was going on. I will tell you though, something that in my 30 some years of observing and watching Minnesota politics, today was this last week was one of the most high strung I've ever seen people before. And there are people on both sides, and they are pretty amped up. Which I also want to just take a moment to say this. And I know we're going to probably be a little edgier with our commentary than we've normally been. But Becky, I think you and I in particular, and I'd like to believe the same as for Billy, is that I think we all want to take a moment to just pause and be like, hey, if you're a candidate to put your name on the ballot, thanks for doing it. I mean, doesn't mean I agree with you, doesn't mean that I agree with your issues, but the fact that we have people and candidates and staffers and volunteers out there trying to make their vision of what they think Minnesota should be. Again, I don't agree with all the candidates that are running and their policy stances, but I think we can appreciate candidates taking time away from their families, staff taking time away from their families, party officers taking time away from their families to help get their candidates elected because of the vision they have for Minnesota. And I think we're all a better place because of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a lot. For anybody to go out there, especially these folks that run statewide, whether they win or lose, they have the amount of confidence thinking that some crazy amount of people may go to the polls and support them. And that's something that I don't think everybody certainly has. And, they've been out there on the campaign trail, long hours, pounding the phone, pounding the pavement, and their staff too. Obviously, Billy and I and yourself, I'll come from that political background, and it's a grind. I mean, it's addicting. It's very exciting. I loved every minute of it, despite very many losses and some very upset primary or general nights. But it's really, like you said, Billy, goal is to go to bed feeling as though you've done everything you could do in your power set out the campaign plan or complete the campaign plan that you set out. And so usually, you can feel pretty good. And then you move forward either towards the general or, towards a vacation, hopefully.
That's right. And I think, I think we're going to, there's going to be a lot of biting commentary, but I think it's just good just to pause and be like, hey, because people don't have to do this. I'd rather have them out there trying to seek elective office than ripping stuff down and being agitators. So thanks for everyone who ran. And that's not an endorsement of anyone's candidacy or policy positions, but thanks for doing it.
Well, and it's a good reminder, we keep talking about how we need good people to step forward into these roles. And while we're here giving our thoughts and opinions and on what we've seen and felt and believe heading into this, it still is very commendable to step forward and hope to make, whether that's the state or your county or your city, better. And we need more good candidates to do it and more people to join into the Republican side, hopefully at some point in my future in Minnesota. And maybe it's this time around. I'm still wearing my rose-colored glasses, man. I am ready to see some good victories and march towards a hopeful election day. Maybe a little naive as well, but I want to wear those rose-colored glasses for a little bit longer.
Just a little superstition about, or a little bit about primary results. I was once told that the initial results are usually correct. And over the last few elections, I've learned that that's not true, but it was a wives' tale that I was told that always take a note of the first results wherever they come through, because they will sometimes hold up. And there's actually no truth to that, but I just wanted to share.
There's no truth to that whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's a total wives' tale. That's funny, though.
Yeah. It's like 1 hour Martinizing and then buying a no king garden hose. There's no such thing.
With this election, though, it'll be interesting to see by race. Like, you would tend to think, I would think Lindell's people will be more of election day voters. So it'll be interesting to see how he does on the early votes and how much he's behind, or if he's behind. Same thing with Kendall. I think he moved up quite a bit in the last poll from the first one. So, how much ballot share does he get? Same thing on the Democrat side, like who's winning on the early ballots. I would think Craig would be ahead on the early ballot. And then, how many people for Flanagan can she get out late from Hennepin, Ramsey County? So that'll be interesting to watch that breakdown on both sides. Let's
chat a little bit more about that governor breakdown. Where do you think, Billy, especially from, some experience you have in the state and now watching from afar, how much impact do you think Qualls has on this race? Do you think he gets 10%? Do you think he breaks 20%?
10%.
Where do you think he falls? And is it going to be something, or is it going to be something?
Hey, look at some of the videos they're posting. 10% is a fair ask, but look, I think he gets somewhere in the low 20s. I'd be surprised if he got below that.
He pulled 11% on the July poll. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, I think he hasn't. I think he's run a terrible race. I think he's low. He's run a very low energy, anemic race, and I think the support he does get will just be the threshold of what an endorsed candidate's basically automatically going to get in a split field. So I think it'll be low 20s.
Becky, if he gets 10%, I will not have turkey at Thanksgiving dinner. I'll have ham instead. That's the bet.
Yeah, what's the split here again? The ham turkey divide.
Always. He never lets a moment miss.
This was before I was a listener.
Becky, yes, Becky doesn't like ham. Doesn't like turkey. She doesn't like turkey.
I like turkey. I think ham is superior.
It's terrible.
I think ham is generally better. I think turkey is good on Thanksgiving. Michael,
you can come back anytime, Billy.
If you were
Grant for joining us tonight, and
we
won't be having him back anytime soon.
That is a tough take.
Yeah, I stand by it with all my takes.
Dry ass turkey.
Yeah, this is a family podcast. So right now, Becky, Kendall Qualls has got 22%.
There you go. Look at that go.
Yeah. Now he's down to Becky.
Oh,
15. Yep.
What other races are we outside of Minnesota? Are we excited to see? Anybody?
We have more new results, Becky. 15 of 87 counties in. Tafoya is out to 55-22 over Schwarzy. Flanagan is at 56%. Craig is at 41. Lindell is at 32. Dameth at 44. Kendall at 20. And Klobuchar running away with it at 88.9%. Scott Jensen is pulling away in the race for state auditor. He's at 66%. It's
impressive.
That's right. We have a new guest joining us. A new guest. Will Davis in the house.
Sorry to disappoint everyone.
There he is.
Will Davis joining us now. To our listeners, this is Will Davis of the DFL side. We have Billy Grant on the Republican side. Becky, who voted in her DFL primary today on the DFL side.
Untrue.
Me rocking my Nixon Now hat, coming up as the thoughtful Republican on this race. Will, what's your take on the numbers so far? Give us your perspective. Will, that was to you. Will's Will's not with us yet.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties with
There
Will.
he is, unfrozen.
Will, you there? No, he's still not with us.
All right.
Becky, so interesting primary results. So what came in? How do we figure that out? 0 complete counties. But
Yeah.
we have portions of
We got some Beltrami County.
How do you navigate this website again?
So if you go to the election results and on the left-hand side, there's precincts reporting.
Oh, there we go.
And you can see the map.
So Beltrami.
Yeah, we got, lots of central Minnesota, a little bit of 2 of Anoka County coming in. Oh yeah, no,
Interesting.
97.
Is there a way
There
to
we go. We're-
download the county results as they come in? Do you guys know?
Where this
That's a very
isn't
good
ChatGPT,
question.
man. Becky's not Claude. So
All right, guy. I was just trying to see if there's a way to build a little more of a sophisticated tracker here.
well, thanks for pointing it on air that we don't have a sophisticated tracker. That's always appreciated on our podcast live streams to have guests needle us for not being more prepared, Billy. Thanks for that. Becky, your take on
I was struggling with his microphone earlier, I think.
thanks. Becky, your take on these results so far. What are you hearing from your friends?
Well, I just heard from one that says, I think it is over. Dameth will win. So, we're getting hot takes right off the bat, and I'm really excited for that. But I mean, anything can really happen. Like you said, we've got a 4.24 precincts in. It is the best we got at this point. We're going to refresh here in a little bit. But
I'll just say this on whoever said that. You can never judge anything until you have early day votes and election day votes. Like there's not an accurate sample until you have enough counties with both, like to judge who's up in the early votes, who's up on election day votes, what's the margin on each.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely. I do always like looking at the raw vote totals, though. In addition, I mean, obviously percentages is easier to rattle off, but like when we look at that Senate or state auditor's race, I mean, Scott Jensen has almost 16,000 to Nate George's 6,000. I mean, as those start to, which obviously 66 and 26% do reflect, but when you look at it in the amount of votes that need to be encompassed back through it, it's always a little shocking when you see some of those gaps grow.
Yeah, that's a margin. And I don't know what to make. I mean, I think that's a little bit of name ID. I think that this one of the big things we're going to have to figure out is what's going to be the name ID component tonight and the impact that it has. And I think that Scott Jensen is that's a sizable margin. He's beating Nate George 2-1. And that's impressive.
Yeah, Jensen's going to win.
What's your read on the governor's race numbers, Billy?
Too early, too split. I expect Damon to have a big lead on early vote. It just depends on how big it is and where it comes from. And I think Mike will eat away at it. So and if it's, and we'll see. So right now it's looking good. Obviously this is a very small, this is like the stuff that's coming in right now is going to be the people who voted the very first day they could. So you're super high affinity 404s. They don't miss an election. If there's a blizzard or a tornado, they're going to be there. That's the people who's getting counted right now. So I expect Mike's votes to get a lot better as we get into the next hour or so.
You think so? Where do you think his? Oh, well, by the way, CNN 2 minutes ago confirmed Senator Amy Klobuchar will win the Democratic nomination for governor of Minnesota. So that was at roughly, CNN declared it at 8:32. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's also, could have been earlier. I had, like I said, one general election results was, like you said, not even in the room yet. I mean, we were doing our last minute runs to the restroom, grabbing water, plugging in our computers and all that. And it can certainly happen. Very, very quickly. We're going to get a refresh here in just a minute.
I've been reaching out. And so I think it's pretty clear that we're going to have an interesting dynamic here. lay some historical context. This is the first time. This is the first time since 1994 that it will be likely that a Republican endorsed candidate loses. A Republican endorsed candidate is might lose statewide. And so what that will trigger is kind of a unique procedure, which is a lot of states, when you win the primary, you are automatically the presumptive, you are the nominee. So whoever wins any of these, if any non-endorsed candidate wins a statewide race against an endorsed candidate, they officially become the Republican nominee, but that does not necessarily confer upon them immediately an endorsement by the Republican Party. And the party constitution requires there to be a formal endorsement for the party to spend money on that. And so what will happen is if an unendorsed candidate wins any of the primary races tonight, there will be a little bit of procedure that will happen. Number one, they will have to wait for the results to be certified by the Secretary of State. That will take roughly a week. And then the party will then, according to their bylaws and constitution, prepare a notice that has to be sent out within 5 days. And then that notice, when it's sent out, will give at least a minimum of a 10-day notice for there to be a state central meeting. And then there will be a state central meeting where generally the only order of scheduled business on the agenda will be whether or not the body wants to endorse whoever is the nominee. I'm going to tell you something as someone who, was deputy chair, understands the rules. It is not a guarantee that whoever wins tonight's primaries and in the course of that defeats a endorsed candidate, that they are guaranteed to get the endorsement of the party. Depending on who wins, I could see there being a number of issues related to that. And we're going to have to wait and see what ends up happening. But I think it's going to be interesting. We have Will Davis joining us back.
I'm back.
So Will Davis on the DFL side, thanks for joining us again. So Becky, I think, and Billy and Will's just joining us. I'll explain. We're discussing a little bit. There'll be a little bit of history tonight, possibly, which is tonight there will be the first time in over 30 years, a Republican endorsed candidate for statewide office may lose in the primary, and what that will entail. And I'm not going to repeat it. We can get into more later, but just kind of finishing up that story, which is there will be a process by which Republicans will have to formally endorse whoever wins, and that is not a guarantee. In 2024, in the second CD, Taylor Rahm was endorsed. He got out of the race, and then Joe Tayrab won the primary. And then even after the election, even after the primary, the second district Republicans did not endorse Joe Tayrab. And so that limited where money could be spent. And so it is likely, and it is possible, probably more than some people know at this point or want to admit, that some of the candidates that win tonight's primary may end up not getting endorsed by the Republican Party. It'll be very interesting to see how that works out for the candidates.
Well, maybe Tom Emmer can bribe them out of it.
Ooh.
All right, easy. Yeah.
Wow.
All
went
right.
there.
We're going to have some guardrails on the conversation here because my former boss, we're not accusing of bribery within your first two sentences
Yes.
on the podcast. But welcome, Will. We're glad to have you.
I have to make an entrance. Come on now.
We have an update in the governor's race.
We do.
Becky, read
Well,
just
in
the
the
Secretary of
governor-
State. Yeah, Secretary of State's.
Secretary of State's website. We have in the governor's race, Damith at 46%, Lindell at 30%, Qualls at just over 20%. We have, of course, if we look at Klobuchar's got that 90%. When we look at the U.S. Senate race, again, this is about just under 10% reporting. We've got 57% for Tafoya, Schwarzy at 22%, and Royce White at 10%. Flanagan is at 52%, and Craig's at 45%. On down, Tad Jude's pulling away with it, 63 to 36%. Scott Jensen still sitting at 66%.
decision desk.
Yeah,
Decision desk has called it for Tafoya.
yeah.
They have called that Michelle Tafoya is projected to win the Minnesota Senate, the nomination on the Republican side for U.S. Senate. Tafoya, I will tell you right now, may have a difficult time getting the party's endorsement.
I'm sorry. I just got a Fox News breaking news alert on my phone that says failed presidential candidate wins Dem primary, and it's Klobuchar's face in the thumbnail. I mean, it's just like so unnecessary, but
That's gratuitous and mean.
it made me chuckle. I screenshotted it so I can say I didn't actually just make it up myself. But yeah, so things are kind of trending with what we've seen so far. Will, get us all the scoop. What are you hearing from your old folks on the DFL side? Any wisdom to impart?
Nothing too juicy yet. I am seeing, seems like turnout is up, at least in the metro area, quite a bit. I'm excuse me if you guys have discussed this already. I've seen a few over the last two midterms. Looks like it's up a few percentage over 4 years ago, and then up quite a bit over 2 years ago. So it seems like enthusiasm's up. And I gotta imagine enthusiasm up is not a bad thing for someone like Mike Lindell. Turning out kind of what we talked about previously, turning out some folks that maybe only turn out for on Trump years. He's kind of maybe moving those people, but aside from that, I don't know. It's still early. I'm not surprised to see some of these folks jumping out to early leads. I would imagine Hennepin County is reporting early, or though Hennepin County is not reporting, maybe. Is that right? Dakota County? Is that
I didn't see any of them yet.
this cycle? What is that? That's a weird one.
Billy, what were you saying?
I didn't see any of them reporting yet last we looked.
There's about 75% of Dakota's in, but
0% from Hennepin.
So Dakota's
Okay.
going to be interesting, particularly in the race for on the DFL side, in the United States Senate primary. It's going to be very interesting to see. Is all of Dakota in?
It's about 74.
Yeah. 74%.
Yeah, and so looking at that right now, Flanagan is at 52. Craig is at 45. Will, does Flanagan? What does Craig need to just keep it close in Dakota? I mean, does she just keep it close in Dakota? What does she need to do in terms of the rest of the state?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. In Hennepin, Ramsey, Dakota, probably like some of the inner ring metro. I would imagine she's got to keep it close there. I can see her doing better in Greater Minnesota versus Peggy Flanagan. I think that's what I would expect. I think it's going to be tight. I would imagine that race ends up within 2 or 3 points is sort of my estimation. And if she keeps it close in the cities in the metro, that's how that will happen.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Do you think that Craig representing part of Dakota County should bring a little bit more of that chair up for her up there?
I would think so, but I think caucus night sort of rebutted the idea that would happen. I think we all saw some of the videos of getting booed and just the results in those counties did not fare well. So I don't anticipate we see any sort of advantage in that district.
Will,
Really?
any predictions you wanna share with us tonight?
I mean,
on either side.
I kind of think Mike Lindell is a lock. If I'm being honest with you, I don't see any. I would. That's where I'm at with that race. Tafoya, I guess I would have predicted Tafoya. Easy to say now that she's already been called. That's sort of Klobuchar-esque sort of dominance within under an hour after polls close. I think we will see. The other side in the Govs race with Lindell and Demuth, I just don't see a way Demuth pulls this one out. I have heard some rumors about her perhaps legally going after Lindell for voter status, his residency status. But I think that'll be sore loser after being rejected 3 times. I think it's probably time to give it up. However, and Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's going to be pretty down the line. Otherwise, Scott Jensen probably doesn't have much of a chance. Isn't that weird?
No,
We
Scott
think Scott
Jensen.
Jensen
Wait for the breaking news. Tell him, Becky.
Wait,
Yes.
what?
Scott Jensen's ripping it up.
Scott
We got-
Jensen is
That's the name
66.
ID thing. No one knows who this other dude is.
Scott Jensen
Wow.
is at 66%. Nate George is at 26%.
He's up by 20,000 votes right now.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what are we doing here? Predicting anything is crazy at this point, I guess. That's wild.
I am so Will explain now. Becky, I think Becky's cheering for Dameth. Fair to
I
say.
am.
So Becky was getting pretty close a little bit ago before you come on to start calling it for Dameth, based on some initial intel that she had. Will explain your cadence as to what needs to happen, and don't say more votes need to come in. Break down like what needs to happen for Dameth to win and for Lindell to win, and don't say cast more votes.
Well, I don't know what else you want me to do here, but what do they need to do? They've already.
Like you said, you think it's a lock for Lindell. Explain why, I guess.
I don't think. Well, Lindell has already. He's kind of the insurgent candidate here, right? She's been considered the favorite from the beginning. Kendall Qualls, believe it or not, who is still somehow in this race, is the endorsed candidate, and Lindell has come back from nowhere in the last couple months with the Trump endorsement. And I mean, I'm telling you, I've been seeing Lindell signs all over Minnetonka. Not that non-signs vote, but I think he has all the momentum. And
They're
think
an indicator of enthusiasm. They don't.
The Joe Mentum.
Joe, exactly right.
Becky's
And
shaking her head.
I just think Mike Lindell fits the profile of somebody that the voters in the GOP primary are going to support far more than Lisa Dameth. I mean, her enthusiasm. I mean, Republican primary voters historically do not go for the safest general election candidate, and I actually don't find her to be particularly safe or great candidate either way. But I think conventionally she's seen as a more safe candidate than Mike Lindell. I think Mike Lindell will turn out people better than Lisa Dameth will.
Becky, your take.
Yeah, I mean, I would beg to disagree on that one. I think as we break down some of the polls and you
It's
see
your
the
show.
folks-
You get to.
Yeah, I can. I mean, our guests can too. But as we look at some of those polls, the numbers that are breaking hard for Lindell are the folks that, I mean, even those voters themselves say, less than a third of the voters in the 18 to 34 in the last poll that had Lindell up, less than a third of them said that they were actually definitely going to vote. So I think that there is certainly an energy and enthusiasm and momentum behind Lindell. I just personally don't buy that it's folks that are actually going to turn out. I think that what we see is the numbers that Dameth pulls in from some of those older folks, 65 plus, 45 plus, and those folks that are traditionally more reliable voters. And we broke this down a little bit last week, but I still kind of stand there that I think, it takes a lot of turnout. And I just don't think that Lindell has the apparatus to actually do that GOTV for those folks that are in his corner. I don't think that he had the infrastructure and push behind able to do that. But anybody knows.
But
Billy,
Becky,
your
aren't you-
response.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say, Becky, aren't you frightened of the rash of DFL voters voting in the GOP primary that has been alleged on Twitter today?
So much, because there's nothing going on the Democrat side that Democrats have a stake in. So absolutely they would be doing that.
Okay. I saw some fake texts that claimed otherwise, but
We got 22, or we got another an update here. So we're with just a little over 11% reporting. We've got Flanagan pulling ahead a little bit. I have to go back and see where this actually came in, but we have 51% Flanagan, 44% Craig. We have Tafoya 51. Do we want to? We'll let you know Tafoya later on. They already called it for her. We have Dameth at 42, Lindell at 29, Qualls under 20% at 19. And then let's see, Tab Jude still at 62%, Scott Jensen still at 66%.
Yes. Bring it home, Jensen. Bring it
Wow.
home.
shocker of the night, shocking the world, as he said last cycle.
Billy, do you want to chime in on in response to Becky's take a little bit on the Lindell votes and how it happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when you look at the breakdown of how this all shakes out, no matter how it shakes out, I think if Lisa Damon could have put this to bed much earlier if she wins, like there was money spent that probably could have been avoided being spent. Primaries now with the president getting involved in them are not usually won in the last 6 weeks. Um, so like you got to think about how much money you're going to raise in a state like Minnesota. It's not going to be, we don't have many donors who are cutting $5 to $10 million checks. So whatever money you get is precious resources. So, if they make it through this, they spend $4 million to get through. How do you re-up that quickly for a general election? Like that's going to be tough. So that's where I think their challenge comes in. And I think if they don't make it through, it's because there wasn't a compelling message. Like I watched some of the creative that I've seen on TV. I don't know that it's like the punchiest stuff to get through a primary. So we'll see. I mean, I definitely don't think Mike has run a great campaign. I think Mike missed tons of opportunities to air the president's endorsement on TV. I think had he done that, he would have put this thing away easily. But he didn't do that. He put out his amnesty plan or whatever the hell that was. So, if he doesn't win, he totally did it to himself. But I think people got to be realistic that you're facing either one of them is facing the best general election candidate we're going to have faced in a long time. And so like you got to move on pretty quickly and try and figure out the next obstacle, which is how do you raise another $4 million to try and accommodate the fact that Amy Klobuchar already has that booked on television right now. So, it's quickly going to move on to the next objective.
No, I mean, I think it's very fair. We certainly are not in, whoever comes out doesn't have the war chest that Amy Klobuchar has. I think what we've seen with Damith and the spending on her behalf so far has been impressive leading into the primary. I hope that continues. If she is the one that's successful out of the primary, we talked about the public subsidy money. We talked about, some of these groups and some more millions that might be coming in after the fact, where I just don't know where that money comes for Lindell and especially when he spends it so wisely on books and pillows himself. So we'll see where that goes. But I still want to, until it's called, I'm remaining optimistic that I believe Damis run a pretty good campaign. I certainly know as somebody who is what we maybe will call a squishy Republican or a rhino sometimes, mom in the suburbs. I think that I've gotten some messagings that seemed compelling for me. I mean, obviously I was a little biased.
What would you say her main message of her campaign is, though?
I mean, I think she's been hitting on the fraud. I think she's been hitting on the fact that she's the only one that stood up to Governor Walz. I think that, seeing my dog is sick and is coughing in the back, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking to Republican voters, hitting on some of that immigration, fraud, tax spending, and then parroting or, championing the fact that you were the one who stood up to the governor and got a deal done, and held the line on some of those things like guns and things that are very important for that Republican base. I mean, I don't think anything is like you said, I don't think anything was super exciting or sexy, but I think that it gets the job done and it tells it in a straightforward, pragmatic way, being the adult in the room that I feel like a lot of voters have been looking for.
I just think like you have to offer a lot more, I mean, in a state like Minnesota, you can't just say what you're against or what you blocked or whatever. Like if she gets through the primary, that may be the case, but I mean, to not like Amy Klobuchar put out her fraud plan, which is like super substantial. And then some of the Damith people said, well, she put out a fraud plan. It's like, well, she sent out a press release. She didn't do what Amy Klobuchar did. So that's why she got more coverage. So I think like if they get through this, they have to be a lot more aggressive in the general election on like, what is your actual vision? What do you want to do? What is your actual plan on how to do that? Because, you have to be a little bit more, you have to think a little bigger, right? So I would like to see them do that.
Absolutely, that goes exactly with, I think it was our first podcast guest ever, and Meeks talked about, we did an op-ed that she had written about how Republicans need to be for, not just against. In this case, though, especially at the primary, she was divided. She was the leader of the House in a divided legislature, going up against a Democrat governor. I mean, I think you have to champion what you were able to successfully block, as well as some of those things moving forward. I think you're right. I think as we move forward, we need to have some more substantive policy discussions, some of those white papers coming out and really making that case, because I think we know that Klobuchar is going to lean in on all the things that she has already. It's been, we've covered a lot of her releases as well. Yeah, I think starting tomorrow, Republican governor candidate needs to hit the ground running.
Let me, if I can, offer a perspective on this. Since we don't know the results yet and how this is going to break out, I struggle with, based on what we know right now, and there's a lot unknown, how Demuth can think that ran a good race. Like, she lost to Kendall Qualls. Not many people can say that they lost to Kendall Qualls. And
Mike
then
Lindell can.
Sure, he can. Absolutely. But I honestly don't know. And what I look at is some of the polling. 7 out of 10 people amongst Republican primary voters wanted someone else other than Demuth. And so if she wins tonight, be curious about the percentages. But I think that I there's a difference between, I think, knocking off Qualls after losing to him once and potentially Lindell, and then winning. I don't think that what will happen, and this is a phrase that I've heard before, just because you win the lottery doesn't mean you're good at business. There's a difference between winning the lottery and getting a bunch of money and being good at business. If they win tonight, the Demuth campaign wins tonight. My thought is, what my expectation is they will spike the football and say, look, we told you so. When I think that the argument can be made that they're running on fumes, because you know what starts tomorrow? Amy Klobuchar has an ad buy that starts tomorrow, and she will not be off the air until through the primary and through the general election. And I don't know that Demuth can compete with that. I don't know that Lindell can compete with that. And I certainly don't think that Qualls can compete with that. And so winning an intramural contest is not like winning a general election. And I don't know that Demuth's campaign or any Republican campaign is in a position to pivot and hit the ground running tomorrow.
And if Lisa Demuth wins, she gets to look at the voters of the state of Minnesota and say, I'm the candidate who said Mike Lindell has too much empathy for immigrants. And I tweeted that earlier this week, and that is not a winning message. I mean, I think that's, if she wins tonight, that was sort of a deal with the devil to get through this primary. And now you got to face up against Amy Klobuchar, and you're the candidate who said that in front of, hundreds of thousands of people marching through Minneapolis. And I just do not think that's a winning message.
I think if Republicans change how they're talking about immigration on some things, that I think we just aren't talking about it the right way now. I think you can look at some of the data Scott Besson pointed to the other day on economics and deportations, and if they talked more about that, people would have a different perspective. But I think the thing that, if they get through this, the immigration thing will be a big issue, but you have to find what is going to be your signature issue in the general election, right? So, like, what does that become? Maybe it's fraud. I don't know. So, like,
it's got to be.
How do you roll that out? How do you pivot on that, knowing that Amy's already put her plan out? Like, how do you attack that? How do you really own that issue and seize that right away?
We have roughly 20. What do you got in, Becky?
Just under 15% here. We've got Flanagan at 51, Craig at 44. We have Demuth at 43, Lindell at 29, Qualls is back up over 20. And we have, everything else is still pretty the same. Ted Jude, 62%, Scott Jensen, 66%.
Isn't this interesting, though?
Oh, they're counting slow tonight.
Isn't this interesting? Secretary of State Steve Simon has 100%, according to Secretary of State Steve Simon's website.
What a coincidence.
That is true.
Isn't that interesting? We'll have to discuss that when we have our favorite public official who respectfully is a nerd. Very favorite of the breakdown with Brock Rebecki is Secretary Steve Simon. So he's at 100% tonight.
100%. We also have AP is called Keith Ellison as winner. Tom Emmer is the winner in CD6. Brad Finstead is the winner in CD1. All breaking news.
Well, all my Polymart bets just lost. So
Really, you went hard against.
that's a joke. I don't bet on any predictive markets. That was a joke.
You can get a sponsorship, a paid partnership,
Apparently,
pretty easily.
yes. So I think it's pretty clear. So the GOP Senate race is over. I think what we're just waiting for now is the DFL Senate race and the GOP primary are the main races that we're talking about. I got to tell you, I don't know which news agency has called the Secretary of State's the state auditor's race yet, but the breakdown with Brock Rebecki is getting pretty close to calling Scott Jensen as the winner of the Republican primary for state auditor. He has 66% of the vote. He has 47,000. Nate George has 18.8.
That's astonishing.
We have,
look, I'm not a math major, but that doesn't look good.
Speaking of astonishing, I always love seeing, some of these candidates and everybody gets votes, right? I mean, it is Ole Savior's got 1,300 votes, man. I mean, he just keeps chugging along.
Keeps trying.
Keeps trying.
Yeah, no,
Maybe.
it's going to be. This is interesting. And then, so 67,000 for Ron Schutz. So yeah, I mean, it looks right now is like Tad Jude's going to win. Scott Jensen is on trending to win. So Republicans might be looking at tonight is Thaddeus Jude for their candidate for Secretary of State, Scott Jensen as the candidate for state auditor, Michelle Tafoya as the candidate for United States Senate, and we're still working on the governor's race. Will, do you like your matchup so far?
Yeah, of course. I liked him before tonight happened, Michael.
Okay.
I feel pretty good about all of them, if I'm being honest with you. Another interesting race I'm watching, and it's mostly because of my location, is State Senate District 46 with Ron Latz, who's facing off against a woman named Lynette. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but that one hasn't started yet. But that's a really fascinating. Obviously, Ron Latz is a very powerful state senator within the DFL. And I will say this, I've lived in St. Louis Park for 4 years now, something like that. And he's running real hard this cycle. I haven't had so many door knockers and mailings in my house since I've lived here as I have in the last couple months. So some of these state legislative races are going to be pretty interesting too. There's 0% reporting so far.
Will, I'm curious your take. We haven't chatted a ton about CD2, but obviously we have an open congressional seat with Angie Craig running for U.S. Senate. What's your take on the breakdown there? We have Little who is endorsed. We've got Matt Klein, Caleb Berg. Results coming in. They have 63% in with Matt Little at 48%, Klein 30%, and Berg at 16%. Is that about what you thought? Did you have any? Yeah.
I would say that's probably a little bigger gap than I expected, but I expected Matt Little to walk away pretty easy with that one. I think he has a lot of the enthusiasm behind him. I think he's hit all the right notes in that race from my perspective, and I think he'll be a great congressman as well.
I live in the second CD. I will remain undecided on whether he will be a good congressman or not, but it will be hopefully a spicy race down in CD2.
I think anytime you get Matt Little, there'll be some spice to the race for sure. And frankly, that entire race has been spicy since I've been working in politics. Every 2 years, it's been a wild ride. So I'm sure it will be again this time around.
Will, if you're looking at the Craig numbers, the Craig versus Flanagan numbers, Craig is the Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. And Becky, I think we're going to be going through names pretty quick tonight. So I think we can drop our rule about saying their titles.
Perfect.
Is that fair? I think we can do that.
fair.
out of utmost respect for elected officials, we're going to drop using their titles tonight. So Flanagan is at just over like 61,000 votes. Flanagan's at 53, roughly 51.
Inverted.
Oh, sorry. Flipped it around. Flanagan's at 61,000 and
Yep.
Craig is at 53,000. So roughly 44, 51. The breakdown between those two. It's close. It's the closest kind of competitive race right now on the DFL side. Will, what's your read of where things are at?
Yeah, I mean, that's about the range that most predictions that I've read have been calling it, 5-6 points or so for Flanagan. Honestly, there just hasn't been a lot of like reliable numbers in this race so far. I think anyone who's kind of been throwing numbers out there is sort of guessing. But I would say that where it's at right now is like roughly within where most people have been calling it. So I would expect it to tighten up. However, I can't imagine it'll stay at this rate. But excuse me, my kid's kind of having a little meltdown in the room here. So if it's being a little noisy, but I would think it'll tighten up a little bit from where it's at now. I mean, I think significantly, but I think it's about where most people predicted.
It is Billy, looking at results, what's your take on where things sit right now?
Too early, man. Not enough votes in. I still haven't seen enough to. I mean, there's still a lot of big counties: Wright County, St. Louis County.
Nobody
Sherburne.
votes in Wright County, do they? Just joking. People vote in Wright County. Oh, Tad Jude's down to 62%.
Oh no.
Oh no, Thaddeus.
For the record, I was on mute, but I laughed at your Wright County joke.
Yeah, that's the kind of humor.
That
Will-
dude's been doing it a while, hasn't he?
Yeah. Billy thinks it's time. Billy believes respectfully it's time for him to go the way of the dodo bird. But we were encouraged by him staying in the race. He has been around a long time. I think he was in the legislature as a Democrat. I think he was in the legislature while it was still nonpartisan. And
That's not great.
hold on, let me just look the facts up here.
When it was a territory, the state.
Easy. Come on.
Like right around the time Lewis and Clark were coming through, or
Well, he's looking that up. Will, you got any good election night stories or traumas that you would like to share?
I can tell you, I will say my first year working in politics was 2016. Not a great year for the DFL. And I remember going to the election night party, and Ken always threw the best parties. I mean, they were just off the charts, just food and booze and drinks and like live bands, you name it.
What you can do with money.
And oh, absolutely. And I walked in and to this party, and nobody was standing. Everyone was kind of lined up around the walls, bawling their eyes out. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I remember thinking, wow, we're gonna do great. I'll be able to get a job at the legislature afterwards, And it turns out like not only did that not happen, but half the people I knew that worked over there lost their jobs shortly thereafter. And it was one of the most depressing nights that I can remember. I remember I was working GOTV in like Northfield, and I was driving up, and I remember like Russ Feingold lost to Johnson in Wisconsin, and it was like, oh, this is going to be a rough, long evening. And sure enough, it was.
We got an update.
Yes, let's hear it.
For governor, we've got, I got to start at the top. I'm sorry. For Senate, we've got Angie Craig with 45%, Peggy Flanagan with just over 51%. Okay. So staying about the same there. We've got Dameth at 44%, Lindell at 30.5%, and Qualls at 20.75%.
It's getting closer.
It is getting closer.
I just want to point out that I was correct about Tad Jude. He was elected to the legislature in 1972 before I was born, and he was elected when it was a nonpartisan legislature. So that means that he caucused with the Democrats, but they were not elected with party label. The Democrats, those cheeky bastards, waited until after the 74 elections in the aftermath of Watergate in 72 and 73 to have there be partisan designation. And so the legislature was nonpartisan for a number of years. and it wasn't until the 74 election to weaponize, sadly, the Watergate matter involving Richard Milhouse Nixon is the reason why we have partisan designation in the legislature. So Tad Jude was elected to the Minnesota legislature on November 7th, 1972.
Michael happens to be wearing his Nixon hat to celebrate.
I am wearing my Nixon hat. And Tad Jude, Thaddeus, as we like to call him here on the breakdown, was the youngest person elected. Like, he was 20 years old and then turned 21 right before he was sworn in. He served on the Hennepin County Board. He was a judge, Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, 95 to 2010. Worked in their offices. United States Army Reserve. He is a man who's done it all. And contrary to Billy's commentary, we're glad he's on the ballot again in 2026.
He shoed horses before that, I believe.
I think he did. He was in
Oh my God.
He was, Becky, I don't think that's true, but territorial legislature.
I didn't think it was true that he was elected before things became partisan. So I mean, anything
It is
is
true.
possible at this point.
It is true.
I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that it was a non-partisan legislature.
You didn't know what the cruel history of your party is in weaponizing Richard Nixon after he was no longer president and making sure that the legislature was partisan. That's when the Republicans changed their name.
2 years
They changed their name from the Republican Party to the IR Party, and they stayed the IR Party.
Soft in Minnesota.
They stayed the IR Party from 74, 73, 74, and then they changed it to 95. I was at the convention when they changed it back.
Nixon did nothing wrong.
Nixon did nothing wrong. And I used to have a bumper sticker because Republicans were called IRs back then. You used to say, "I think, therefore IR."
Clever.
Yes.
Nixon would be a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat these days if he were around. He started the
Nixon?
EPA.
Nixon would probably actually be a Southern Democrat based on, which is quite interesting if you know Nixon's history. So,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, he would not get endorsed by today's Republican Party. Nixon would not, nor would Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So
Ronald Reagan would be hosting a podcast with you, Michael.
he would, that showboat. That damn showboat. Let's see. Scott Jensen still at 66%.
He
Isn't
sure
that
is.
fun, Becky?
Yes, and for the record, I can absolutely continue to review those numbers, but until Secretary of State and the auditors' races break away from kind of that breakdown we've got so far, we're just gonna call it the same.
What
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what does this say about the endorsement process for the GOP? I mean, obviously the DFL hasn't had a great record, especially in gov races historically, but this is sort of a full ticket wipeout in some ways for the GOP. Is this like have a lasting legacy, or is this just like a one cycle blip? Or
Should have a lasting legacy if people just have the courage to do, like, and this was my criticism of Davis' campaign you should have just declared you're running from the primary from the beginning. Like, don't say you're going to commit to the endorsement and then try and back out of it later. Like, if everyone just says, hey, I still want to compete for the endorsement, but I'm ultimately going to the primary, it doesn't matter so much. And I'll, like, in Utah, where we do a lot of work at my firm, they have an endorsement. People still compete for it, but the primary is a month later. So it really doesn't, it's not like binding, and it doesn't matter all that much. So that's where the Minnesota endorsement needs to get to for Republicans to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Republicans like myself have been, just waiting for the opportunity where we have non-endorsed candidates beating the endorsed candidates as that kind of push over that finish line. I think there's a big appetite to do away with that. I mean, I also still think let's champion June primary. But certainly I think the endorsement process is extremely broken on the Republican side. And I say that as somebody who has loved and explored and manipulated that process fair and square.
This is a live podcast. You just said manipulated.
I don't mean it like in manipulating votes. I mean, like you work the system, you work your plan in the system of the endorsement. And so I personally have loved the gamemanship of endorsements, but I think we need to be done.
I took manipulation in the total nefarious way.
I'm sorry, I did not mean that.
Yeah.
Especially after, we had some of that conversation this year. You're right. That was a poor choice of words.
That's all right. How late do we think? Let's see, Tafoya. Let's see, we're at 39, roughly 19% in.
Yeah, 19.2.
Scott Senson's still holding strong. And Flanagan, I would expect. I would expect this to tighten up, wouldn't you, Will? The Senate race?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll land within 3 points probably by the end, but that's I think I'm probably more. I think I'm like my predictions have been a lot tighter than most people's. I think most people have expected it between 5 and 6 that I've seen, but I expect it to be within 3 by the end of it. But that being said, I mean, Flanagan winning by so much in a place like Anoka County is pretty interesting to me. I mean, I think if that is a sign, then I could be very wrong and it might be bigger than we expected.
So you're seeing some Anoka County results in?
Yes. Let me see if I can find it here. I saw at one point it was 58% to 40 with 87% votes in Anoka County.
Becky, what's your read on you're a Anoka County gal? What's your read on what's going on in Anoka County? Is that reflective of your vote at your precinct caucus today up in Anoka County?
No, because I voted on the Republican side, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, no, that is surprising to me. I just was pulling it up too. I certainly thought Anoka County would be more of a Craigland. I'm very surprised that.
Yeah.
Just looking at the results.
I think it's fascinating.
Absolutely. That's why we love this, is because we're such nerds and it's so fascinating.
Where are you guys seeing that it's Anoka County? What website are you looking at? Is it Secretary of State's?
Yeah, you can break down the state and federal results by county, in
Nice.
addition to looking at the map.
Nice. Well, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. I think it's going to be, when we start to get some of the results in northern Minnesota, it's going to be interesting on that. And Will, I think Anoka County is going to be a bellwether too. I mean, the fact that it's coming in like that in Anoka County, I think is telling.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm a born and raised in Anoka County myself, and like
That's
Becky,
unfortunate.
Pretty Coon Rapids, Minnesota, born and raised.
Oof.
Well, I mean, I'm Anoka, which is arguably better. So
Debatable.
I just had to pull up Kuchiching because we had 96% in there as well. And Flanagan's got 59% to Craig's 36% in
Kuchiching?
In Kuchiching.
As goes Kuchiching, as goes the rest of the state, I think is the phrase.
That is how it goes. It just rolls off the tongue.
Yes.
Fascinating. Damath is beating Lindell in Anoka County pretty handily as well, which is pretty interesting. I kind of didn't expect that either.
I would have thought that Lindell would have done better. Will do better in outstate. Is that fair, Will? I mean, Billy?
Yes.
They don't like outstate. We call it Greater Minnesota.
Greater Minnesota, whatever. Whatever's out farther than Coon Rapids. So that's Billy, where you're banking that you think Lindell's support will come in.
I mean, Lindell's going to close this gap. Like, no matter if he wins or loses, she's not going to win by this much. Like, there's 19% in. You look at the stuff that's in. There's still a lot of rural counties that have no votes in. So he's gonna close it up. I mean, I wouldn't feel great about it right now if I were him, but I'd certainly like. I think there were about 75,000 or so early votes cast, and this is about 80,000 votes. So this could either be all early votes, or I don't know how much of this is election day vote, but it's not from all 87 counties. So there's really no way. If I was filling out a tracker for one of these campaigns right now, you still can't make any definitive predictions.
Correct.
One way or the other.
Joining us here on the show will be David Fitzsimmons, one of Becky's favorite guests, David
Favorite.
Fitzsimmons. David, thank you for joining us tonight.
The goat.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Good to
Hello,
see
hello,
this
friend.
august crew.
Yeah.
David, do you know Will Davis? Have you two crossed paths?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think maybe if not directly through some sort of email interaction or something at one point, but
It probably wasn't good, right?
Entirely possible. I'm sure it was friendly.
I'm sure it was friendly. I'm sure it
I'm
was.
sure it was.
I'm sure it was
I tried to
inviting.
make most of mine that way, but
Yeah, inviting to the Fitzsimmons Christmas party, which I didn't get an invite to either. David, from your lofty perch up on high, what are you seeing? What's your read?
I mean, I think it's in the governor's race on the Republican side, I think was a big watch, and I mean, I certainly would feel pretty happy to be at Dameth camp right now on where they're at. I don't know what everybody else has been saying before I jumped on, but I mean, it certainly seems like they got margins where they needed to win and held things close where they needed to. So I just don't really see another outcome on that direction.
David, I'll give you a quick little recap. I'm full team Dameth. The others are skeptics. Just
Okay.
unsure. But I'm refusing to take off my rose-colored glasses, and I believe that she's gonna pull it through. But we do have a real quick an update here with 25% in. We have Flanagan at 52, Craig at 46. We have Dameth at 45, Lindell just under 31, and Kendall Qualls at 21. And then the other ones still remaining the same, 62-37 with Tad Jude, 67-26 with Scott Jensen. Big
Yeah,
stuff,
I mean,
huh?
I assume you've already talked about the lack of decisive winning by endorsed candidates on the Republican side, at least on the statewide level.
Yeah, so kind of, I would love to pick your brain on this because as a fun fact, my first statewide endorsed race was with David Fitzsimmons on the Emmer gubernatorial race back in 2010. I think that we've worked together on a couple of different endorsements, and so I have known and loved that. But we also know that there's been a lot of folks that have been wanting to do away with the endorsement process for a while, and from my perspective, it really is just waiting for one or a number of candidates to defeat endorsed candidates for that to kind of happen. What's your take on that whole situation and conversation surrounding them and GOP endorsement, especially at the statewide level?
Well, I mean, certainly I think looking at right now, I mean, basically 3 endorsed statewide Republican candidates are not going to be successful. I mean, essentially the only other contested one was Tad Jude, right? So basically one out of 4. It's certainly not a ringing endorsement of the endorsement at the moment.
It's not a ringing endorsement. And what do you think? Do you think the party, based on how this primary has been run so far, will come together in a united way after tonight?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot harder to predict. That's a lot of people making a lot of different decisions, starting kind of at the candidates levels and how they do that, and not just by the people who weren't successful, but by the people who are successful, and how you make that work. I think that's probably something I think everybody on this panel understands. Like, one of the first things you have to think about when you do win an intra-party fight is how are you going to try to mend some of those relationships and fences that you need to. And so it puts a big onus on the campaigns that were successful of how are they going to work on that. Hopefully they've kind of thought of that and have some plans and strategies, but there's a lot of big what if or X factors there of how are they going to proceed with this.
that is one thing that, and Will, you can speak to this for a second. That's one thing I think the Democrats do a better job of in this state, is that through their nomination process, ending on the primary, this is where the candidates are nominated. The Democrats are just generally better at running races and keeping everyone together, and launching from primary night into the general election. How do Democrats do that so well? And what's your read of what you think how united the Republicans are going to be?
I mean, just from experience, everything is so centralized around the state party. The state party really is the center of gravity for the DFL, or at least traditionally under Ken it was. And he really was able to hold everything together the coordinated is so powerful. I mean, any campaign, any DFL campaign that wants to matter has to buy in and be a part of it. There are occasions that candidates can sit it out. Sometimes, a CD5 candidate can sit it out, CD4 on occasion, but statewide, you have to be a part of it. You're going to miss out on so much manpower and infrastructure and power. And I think it really helps keep everybody rowing in the same direction. Obviously, it's not perfect. We've had a few gov endorsements in a row that have not gone our way, the state party, but overall it's really strong because the center of gravity lies at the state party, and they've been able to hold that together for a long time now.
Billy, what's your read on how what the party needs to do on the Republican side? If this trend continues, there's going to be, obviously we have at least one non-endorsed candidate that won tonight. What's the party need to do to keep everyone together and hope to compete with the unity that the Democrats have?
Yeah, I don't see how the current chairman's going to do that. I think he's completely inept, and I just don't see him having the political fortitude to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not going to wish cast anything. I think that others in the party are capable of doing that. But when you talk about the state party itself, I don't have any confidence in his ability to do that. I think the candidates, we'll see if they're able to do that. I wouldn't say this was the most bitter primary. It didn't, despite the personalities online certainly liking to insert themselves and make it seem like it was a life or death thing. I don't see any huge animosity between the candidates. So I would like to think they could all work together, but look, it's going to be a really tough general election. So let's not kid ourselves on that. The unity needs to happen soon. And, if it doesn't, it's going to hurt, the sooner the better for their purposes.
The GOP really has a tough job over there. I'll grant that. I mean, you got something like the CD2 GOP, which every cycle seems to be kind of off the rails. They're always butting heads with the party. I know CD8 GOP has butted heads traditionally with the party as well. And it just seems like they're all kind of running their own agenda in different directions, despite being a congressional district caucus that operates under the party. I don't understand quite how it happens like that, but it seems like their leadership is off the rails. Their voters are just completely on a different spectrum. And I don't know what kind of culture change needs to happen over there that fixes that. But I mean, I agree that the current state party chairman there is inept, but I don't know who can take that job and sort of get people in line. It seems like it's a very difficult gig. And it was difficult for Ken when he started too. There was some of that, but I think this sort of new era of social media and all that plays a huge role in sort of getting all these activists to kind of, they're splitting off and going different ways. And it seems like there's no bringing them back.
David, your take.
Well, I think, kind of back from the endorsement side, it's our system is based on, our endorsement system is based on, at least conceptually, a representative type of system. They're elected at their precincts. They further elect delegates to the local parties, and then the local parties to the state and congressional. But like any representative, you have to be very mindful of your constituency. And I think that's where, some of the mentality has gone off track in the party. You don't just have carte blanche then to do whatever you want to do and expect that people will just follow along. That are in Minnesota, you still have the primary voters have the veto, so you can say whatever you want in an endorsement. But if the primary voters say you're dead wrong, then that's it. That's the decision. And so I think that's just, some of the change in focus that has to be. And I think, talking about some of the local parties, you just clearly see, some of the local parties get so far out of sync with the wider electorate of their party and in their locality. And that's just not sustainable.
I would agree. Looking at the numbers right now, Dameth is at 46%. Yeah. And that's a significant number. We still got a lot of vote to come in. It could get closer, but let's say that trend holds up. What does the party look like? And how does this map this out, David? What needs to happen over the next few days if Dameth ends up winning to somehow win over the other percentage of the party that's not with her?
Well, and not only Dameth, Michael. I mean, even the second place currently is Lindell. You have to go to the third place before you would get the endorsed candidate. So in our party structure, we have to have a state central, if memory serves me right.
Correct.
And we have to do a post primary endorsement from state central. So we're going to have a state central, and presumably, based on what I'm seeing, we're going to have three races on the agenda to deal with. And that's a situation we do not have a lot of recent history with that. Quite frankly, I think one of the only more recent ones was in CD2 last cycle, and they actually didn't even do it. So, but that's again then a tough spot, because are people who are supposed to be representative of their area and their party, they're going to go to a state central and they're going to say, we're not going to endorse any candidate for the general election. They only have so many choices at this point. So, but I expect it to be, it might be contentious. Obviously we know there's people in our party that are going to say we're mad, so it's better to just, take the L in the general election and feel better about ourselves. And there's people that definitely don't see the world that way.
If there's anything that the Republican Party is good at in the state, it's moral victories versus election victories. And will say to you, they did that in 2024. And as this trends right now, and we were discussing this, David, before you got on, we went through some of that kind of the procedure of how it's going to happen. I am not convinced today that all of the candidates that win the nomination tonight, if it ends up being the three that are currently leading, all of them will get the endorsement. I think that I could see that happening. Not saying that that's right or wrong, fair, unfair, just given my analysis as best I can, right down the middle. I think that that's an absolute possibility.
What does that mean structurally? I'm sorry, David. I'm just real curious. Structurally, what does that mean? If Dameth does not get that endorsement, is the state party just not allowed to work on her behalf? Are they just completely barred from doing that? They just sit it out? I don't understand. How does that work?
Yeah, largely they don't commit to it. Now, some of it is like, is that the end of the world anymore? It certainly isn't in the way it it would have been in past years, just because there's so many more options of outside groups now. And certainly they could work a lot directly through RGA. They could do things, through the RNC and just kind of bypass the state, but it certainly doesn't it doesn't help. It doesn't, and I mean, I think now Billy's gone to hear me say, he's right, but I mean, we're certainly not in an advantage situation right now as Republicans in the state anyway. So, just further hampering ourselves just is not to me is not a path we should take. If you missed it, Billy, I was saying you were right about us being in a tough.
No need to repeat. We don't need to
I
be
heard
telling
you.
people they're right.
I was here. My cat was banging around.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's ways to work around it, but I certainly would. I mean, I personally hope. I mean, I'm a state central delegate. I hope there's kind of no question that we endorse the winners of the primary. I mean, our prime directive as a party is to elect people to office in general elections. That is the number 1 through 9 things that we are supposed to do. So if we're skipping those,
sorry to cut you off just real quick. I did hear you were the top vote getter on State Central Wright County. Is that true?
I don't know. I demanded a recount, but
good, as you should. You never trust them. Sorry, Becky. I know you're trying to say
No.
something.
All I was going to say is I do think it of note here is that it is state central, not the entire state convention delegation. So it is a different makeup. It is a different body. It is a different representative group of Republicans there. So I don't know if my optimism will remain in 24 hours, but I do believe that body in the past, I don't know the current makeup. I haven't looked at the list of the, 300 folks there, but in my experience, I do believe that's a body that I believe would follow through with this. So going to remain cautiously optimistic, which is my new motto of 2026.
I will try to be not cautiously optimistic, but try to be just right down the middle as I can. I think that if you look at what happened post-convention, and we talked about this in the podcast, there were a number of things that I think the party did in the days following the state convention that a lot of people are going to be mad about. And I think the Qualls campaign, if this trend holds up, is going to have a pretty compelling case that they may make. First of all, I will just say this on air. I don't think there's a lot of respect between the Qualls campaign and the Demuth campaign. And so if this trend continues, I don't know, in light of what happened in the immediate aftermath of the state convention, where I think the state party went out there and kind of gave a green light to Demuth running in the primary and kind of breaking her word. The state executive committee chimed in pretty quickly and said, hold on a minute, Mr. Chairman, can't quite do that. And so I could see there being some hard feelings about whether the party did enough, particularly from the chairman, to support the endorsed process and to support the endorsed candidates. And I think that I fully expect the state central meeting to be rockier than you may be optimistic with, Becky.
No, I think that's fair. I think there are certainly, yes, I think that absolutely well said. The chairman, I mean, we talked about it. I don't know where that came from and how he proceeded in the way he did. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a lot of drama surrounding that and him and his decisions following the convention back in May.
There's a long way to go, but Lindell's looking pretty cooked, isn't he?
We have.
Y'all may be cooked.
I think so. I told Becky at 8:30 it was over. So
I shared that I got a text message. I did not share who texted me that. It was David who texted me that Demuth's got it.
I think it was like at that point you just couldn't see where any of these votes are coming from.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there weren't a lot, but I mean the basic structure is Demuth has some places where she's getting, the differential is always what matters, right? It's so like the raw number of bankable votes, and where Demuth was winning, she was getting large numbers of votes she could put in her column. And virtually any place Lindell is winning, it's by a small percentage and a small number of votes. So there's just it's kind of no contest then. There's no way to offset that.
So we do have 40% in. You want to update?
Yes, and Decision Desk has called it for Dameth.
Wow, I missed that.
They
Well,
only,
with 40%,
they only took hour longer than me, Becky.
it's
Nice.
true, almost exactly.
Real decision desk.
The real. Here's the deal. I mean, I'm sure if you've heard me ever talk about David Fitzsimmons on the podcast or off, you get the decision desk of all things.
He's the
Minnesota
undisputed
politics.
goat. He's the undisputed goat.
Absolutely. We have in the Senate race, we've got Flanagan at 53, Craig at 44. So that gap is widening a little bit there. We've got Dameth at 45, Lindell at 31, Qualls at 20. The Tad Jude is no longer at 62%. He's at 60%, but still looking pretty set there.
Nice job, Thaddeus.
And Scott Jensen has gotten out of 66%. He's up to 67%.
Oof.
6'7".
6'7". Nice. My kids will be happy you did that.
Wow.
That's nice. So this is going to be fascinating. Will, what are we still surprised at the Senate race, the leads? You're muted, big guy.
Thank you. Yeah, I am surprised. I'm surprised at how huge the gap is, and I wonder what that means for the general. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what is sinking Angie Craig here. It was the vote on the Lake and Riley Act, and I wonder, kind of what that means for the general, for all these Republican candidates who are obviously very, very pro that as well. I think it's probably going to be a campaign based around that. I'm surprised at the size of this race, and that just tells me the passion is there for a lot of DFLers and a lot of probably tepid DFLers. I bet we're going to see a lot of new voters for the party this time in this primary that hadn't voted in a primary before. I think a lot of people are fired up. Yeah, that's just staggering numbers, to be honest with you. There's still a lot to go, but she's winning 8 points in Dakota County and kind of across the board here. So,
yeah, on the turnout question we talked about earlier, this is not a good sign for Republicans overall.
How so? Explain.
Just from pure energy standpoint, I would say is not like a good trend. Now you can argue that's because of the money spent and everything like that, but when we were talking about turnout earlier, I mean, it just looks like solid chunk more for them right now.
I don't think that money spend gap is going away either. So,
I mean, in that, I certainly don't know the Democrat side nearly as well, but I mean, it certainly seems like Flanagan's has that. Like, I don't see any place where Craig is going to turn the corner on that race tonight.
David, I know we only have a couple more minutes here. Give us your final parting words. What's your thought about how turnout is looking for both sides in general? Are we going to surpass, maybe have we already surpassed winner, or are we going to surpass that max turnout number? And then also finish off with what is maybe the biggest surprise of the night so far for you?
I mean, I think this is just one of the biggest, primary nights that we've had for multiple races, both parties. I mean, this is really pretty unusual for Minnesota. I think that just had a history of things being kind of pre-decided, whether through incumbency or the parties or things of that nature. So I think hopefully it's something good for the state and healthy to have that many people kind of engaged in this process in general. I mean, like I said, with what Billy had said, was I totally believe this is, structurally this is a tough cycle and a tough state for us. Like on the Republican side, there's no doubt about it. However, I would say that this night has probably gone relatively as well as it could have for our Republican ticket. I mean, we just our incumbents, kind of facing, kind of the far right challengers have, scored decisive victories. We have a clear Senate win on our side, on the Republican side. And I think, a very, divided Democrat side that is going to produce presumably Lieutenant Governor Flanagan that is, is going to have a lot of tie-ins to the fraud issue, which is kind of a counter messaging point that we have in this state that, a lot of the country doesn't have from the Republican side. So I think there's definitely some positives, and then obviously Dameth. I think not having Lindell, I think there was a lot of concern of how that was going to work on our side. So, it's maybe that put that I don't think too many people accuse me of being like the rosy picture guy. So I'm definitely not doing that. But there were definitely some ways that the night could have gone a lot worse for us. I mean, I'll even say in CD2, that's a district that's kind of had some acrimony in the past few years, and we didn't even have a primary on our side. State Senator Pratt has seemed like he's kind of catching some rhythm on his side, and and Matt Little is not on the Angie Craig style track of a representative in kind of suburban to rural part of the metro. So we'll see if that race can be kind of brought a little bit into the national spotlight as well.
Fantastic. Well, we are so grateful that you joined us and imparted all of your wisdom on us here tonight. So thank you for everything, David. Congratulations to your boss for winning his primary. And I'm sure we'll make you come back on and chat with us before the general election in November.
Well, good night, everybody, and all the lucky listeners to the great show you guys have.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Will, I know you are also got just a couple more minutes for us. Give us your similar hot takes.
I don't have too many hot takes tonight. I'll be honest with you. I think from our perspective, I think what happened in January is feeding specifically the Senate race. I think it's a very clear and decisive victory thus far, at least a clear and decisive lead. And I think it has 100% to do with what happened in January with ICE coming in and grabbing people off the streets and shooting two people. And, I think the Laken Riley votes came back to bite Angie Craig. And I think people are motivated about it. I think they're pissed off. And I think it is going to, I think if the election happened sooner, it probably would have helped even more. People forget, but I think a lot of the teeth have come out of the fraud argument for Republicans on this stuff. I think for whatever the problems were, there were a lot of problems that caused the fraud. I think Republicans have proven that they are not the reliable caretakers of the state after what happened. And so I think they have proven to be complete failures on keeping on that message and staying on it. And I think it's probably, I agree with David where he said it was at best night you could have expected for Republicans. Probably. I don't think it's going to help in November. I really do not. And with this enthusiasm that we are seeing right now, I think it's going to carry.
Well, I think one thing we have going for us is Lieutenant Governor Flanagan continuing on to November allows us to really hit home on that fraud a little bit longer. So we'll continue championing that. And Will, we're super grateful for you joining us as well. We know you got kids and jumping in and out and life in general, but your takes are always welcomed and appreciated.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to point out the top two races on this ticket are going to be all women by the looks of it, which is going to be probably the first time ever, I would imagine. State, Senate, and Gov are going to be all women on both sides of the aisle. So that'll be pretty interesting.
That's wonderful. Will, thanks for joining us. We'll hope to have you back soon.
All right. Thanks, all.
Thanks.
We have a statement from Kendall Qualls congratulating our next governor, Lisa Dameth, for earning the support of the Republican primary voters. While this was not the outcome we hoped for, incredibly grateful, and goes on. But that is, talk about, man, Johnny on the spot. I like it.
a few points that I wanted to give David and Will an opportunity to leave. And I think before we bring our next guest on, I think it'd be good just to have it be just a few Republicans who can talk. I have to agree. This is where I'll kind of set things up. Winning tonight and here's what I foresee happening. Hope it doesn't. I haven't done a lot of searching of social media because we're watching it. I expect there to be a number of Republicans spiking the football regarding victories and stuff that they had, not understanding how to win with grace and be magnanimous. I will tell you that I think that there is a real possibility that one, if not two, but not all three of the candidates that win the primary today on the Republican side do not get endorsed by the party. I think that's a real possibility. I think that there is substantive frustration with how the chairman of the party handled the days after the state convention. And I could see there being a lot of rough feathers about that. I will also tell you that I think that there is one thing that I think the Demuth campaign is very bad at. It is successful addition. And what I mean by that is when it comes to the persuasion, winning over the broad coalition that wins, the job on the Demuth campaign, if the votes stay as they are and they win, is they have to win over Qualls supporters and Lindell supporters. And I will just tell you, my honest take is I think that this is where the Demuth campaign will be bad. I don't think that they've been successful at winning over their fellow Republicans. And you can talk about the fact that she won the primary tonight, but let's be clear about something. Even right now, close to 4 out of 10 Republicans, 6 out of 10 Republicans are going to went to a ballot box today and voted against Lisa Demuth. And so the question I think that the Demuth campaign has is how do they springboard from tonight into the general election and win over Lindell supporters and Kendall Qualls supporters? That's where I think the challenge is, because the Democrats go through this nomination process, and it's a very normal part of their process to have this. I have zero doubt that Angie Craig supporters and Peggy Flanagan supporters will come together. I have absolute doubt that the Republicans, particularly on the governor's race, are in any way going to come together. And part of the reason I say that is because I think the Demuth Wilson ticket has been very bad over the last few months of winning over the majority of Republicans that they need. So if you look at the coalition that's needed, that kind of unity, I'm not saying they're going to stay at home, but in terms of having that same mobilizing force that the Democrats have, there is a heavy burden right now on the Demuth Wilson campaign to win people over. And I just honestly will tell you, show me an example of where they've done that.
Well, a primary is different than a general. And I think when you're going into this and knowing where things are standing and what they're seeing on modeling and from polling, it's a different race. There were certain people that they were targeting to make sure were on their side and make sure they get out and vote. And there were certain people that they knew, especially after the Trump endorsement, were just not going to come over to Demuth. But I think now, everything changes, right? I think that she has the best shot, obviously, versus Lindell and Qualls of bringing over some of those folks. I don't necessarily know that if Lindell got through the primary, he would have been successful in bringing over some of the non-MAGA voters. And so, obviously, I think one thing that would be interesting to see is how and if what Trump does from between now and the general with a candidate he did not endorse moving forward. And if he comes out with a new endorsement for her and really wants to make sure that Republicans are successful here. But I have faith. I think I know some folks on the team. I think that Demuth herself has shown herself to be, from when we first talked to her until what we see on the campaign trail now, I think that she's been impressive at articulating her policy positions and stances, well at the legislature, and I think we'll see that moving forward. And Ryan Wilson is a great lieutenant governor candidate, and I think that him being out there on the campaign trail a little bit more, I can see some of that conversation working to bring in some of those MAGA Lindell voters, as well as one thing that I think she has that I don't think that the other candidates have is that ability with the suburban women, which we've time and time again talked about being a major player here. So I think that while that hasn't necessarily needed to be the full strategy up until this point, I think as you shift towards the general, I have faith that I think that they can shift that messaging and start to bring in some of those folks. Unity on the Republican Party, though, has never been something that we're super proud of and can stand up behind. So I'm with you. I understand the skepticism of the endorsement at State Central of the base coming together. It's not something we have a good history of. And so I think it's a fair point. But I think that from what we've seen from her at the legislature, what we know of her and Ryan Wilson, I think they can move the needle when they need to.
The other point I would just say, and Billy, I want to get your thoughts on this too, is fundraising. She will likely start this race with little or no money. Now, there'll be a transfer, 1.2, but Klobuchar is incredibly well funded. She will be going up on TV tomorrow, and she'll be on TV through the rest of the election cycle. And so, again, the goal is not to win an intramural contest. The goal is to win a general election. And I am puzzled at how, and I'll say this about any of the Republican candidates, how any of the Republican candidates, particularly for governor, are in a position to win. I think the strongest message that I heard in the last week to 10 days from the Demuth campaign and their supporters was she will prevent a trifecta. In essence, she will lose less. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the incentive is on the governor's race that this changes much in terms of, and what I mean by that is this: I don't think this is going to change the rankings. I don't think there's any polls that are going to come out that change the rankings on this race, the scale, but I don't think Senator Klobuchar is in any less jeopardy of not winning the governor's race because Lisa Demuth is the nominee. So objectively, I know it's important to win the primary, and that's a part of the process, and we want to be excited about that. But I struggle with how is the Demuth campaign springboarding out of this? And I think we're looking at weeks likely before there's more of at the earliest, that endorsing convention, that State Central meeting will happen likely at the end of September, end of August, first week in September. So there will likely not be a Republican endorsed candidate for governor, even though there's a nominee, for a couple weeks now. That's an advantage that the Democrats have. And during that time, I know that Demuth won, as of right now, won the primary, but I don't know that the general election forecast has been changed.
Yeah, here's the structure that we typically run into in Minnesota that I think they will now have to deal with. Obviously the Democrats are going to be on the air. Both Klobuchar will be doing positive, and I assume Alliance for a Better Minnesota and some of those groups will be on the air right away doing negative. So she gets the $1.2 million transfer. They'll get on the air as soon as they can. The issue, I think, with her is as strong as her fundraising was compared to the others in this primary. It's like, how many of those people double maxed or maxed out already that would be people you would now normally go to after the primary? I haven't looked at it that closely. I don't know. But it's like, how much new money can you get quickly and get it pretty much now, right? I mean, you got to get on the air as soon as you can. August is typically a decent fundraising month. September is better, but like, it's such a challenge to then just basically keep funneling coal into the furnace. So that's what they're going to run into. And then, I think midterms often get misunderstood, and kind of what I was describing earlier with the Kistner example was, I think in 22, when we did the retrospective with the NRCC and others, like one of the big things we focused on was that we didn't give our base enough of an issue to turn out. Like, we ran perfect campaigns to the middle. We talked about Biden. We talked about inflation. But we actually missed some of those issues that people were really passionate about in 2021, like the the school reforms with the critical race theory, if you guys remember all that, people are super passionate about that. People are so passionate about the lockdowns. And so we missed issues to motivate our base. So for them, I think actually to the polar opposite of what Will was saying, like finding ways to actually talk about immigration in a way where it actually explains, hey, look at despite all the drama, look at the rent prices that went down in Minneapolis and St. Paul after ICE came through. It went down 20 to 30% basically everywhere they've been across the country. Home prices are dropping 20 to 30% across the country as soon as these deportations started, right? Walmart and others have lowered the price of ground beef and other items 15 to 20%. Pretty much directly after we cut off the SNAP benefits from some of these other people, illegals and others that shouldn't have been on it. So when you look at some of these things, that's how you can actually pivot your economic message. But people get scared to talk about this stuff. And it's not just a race to the middle in a midterm. And that's where people get this wrong. And I'm saying this because I've done it myself and I've made this mistake. You have to do both. You have to turn out your base and you have to win the suburban women that you're talking about. But I fundamentally believe people in this country, everyone knows things have gotten really expensive, right? No one has answered the question, why did that happen? And a lot of it ties back to immigration. And I've been working with candidates on this all over the country. Michael's heard me talk about this privately with him a lot. Like, we have to find ways to talk about affordability, and running away from the immigration thing is the wrong approach for Republicans. We actually have to explain to people that the immigration surge had a massive impact on your home prices, your grocery prices, everything. And they did it on purpose. So that needs to be explained. You can't run away from the immigration surge. You have to explain why it was necessary and why, oh, by the way, your rent prices dropped 20 to 30%. You can actually buy a home now, not for an overinflated price in the metro. So not to go on a tangent, but like in terms of the messaging, I would love to see, not that everyone needs to take my advice, but we're going to see Republicans start pivoting to this around the country. So you'll see other examples of this. And in Minnesota, despite all the noise the media and the Democrats make, I would love to see us find a way to tie that into affordability, because affordability, as you both know, is not going away. That's what everyone's talking about. That is going to be the central focus. If you can't own it, it's going to be rough.
Joining us now is Julius Hernandez. Julius, thank you for joining us from the state of Colorado. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Even from Colorado, I'm a big hater of turkey, and so I just wanted to let Becky know when I got on, I'm offering a stick of unity. Ham is the way to go.
Love
Julius,
it.
I don't know if you ever met Billy Grant, but it's
Yeah. I know Billy.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
long
A
time
very
ago.
long time ago. Billy looks different. I look a lot different. He looks better than me. So there's that.
Thanks, man. Good to see you.
Julius, give us your hot take on what's your read of things right now.
I don't know if it's a hot take. I think the Senate race is done. I'm a little shocked that they haven't called that on the DFL side. I think they're probably waiting for the Hennepin County drop just to be like 100% certain. But Peggy Flanagan's up about 30,000 votes from what I'm seeing, and Hennepin County is only going to expand that. But Angie needed to run it, or Congresswoman Craig. I know you guys have a lot of people you're talking about, but I'm still going to use proper terms because I'm a gentleman. Congresswoman Craig really had to run it up in Dakota. She had to run it up in some of these other counties that are surrounding the metro, and she just didn't do it the way that she needed to. This race is done, I think, and I am a little shocked that they haven't called it, but I am also a little shocked that Hennepin County hasn't released their results. I've been a part of a lot of Hennepin County races, and usually they drop their results around 9 or 9:30. So I'm a little shocked by that, but I think that's done. I am a little surprised by Dameth. I think the biggest thing that we could all probably take away from this is pollsters might need to go out of business for a little bit.
I don't think it's that, man. I think Mike Lindell, look, if he had run a single ad touting the president's endorsement, if he had done anything remotely competently, every primary in the country, if you educate people about the president's endorsement and you get that awareness close to 70%, the people don't lose. It doesn't matter if it's West Coast, Midwest, East Coast. The guy's endorsement is the most powerful thing in American politics. Doesn't matter who the candidate is, how special they are, unless you're dumping in $100 million like the guy in Georgia did. But Mike Lindell ran an awful campaign. He did not get the awareness. He did not advertise the president's endorsement. He did not get the awareness up anywhere close to 70%. He released a terrible immigration plan that no one cared about. So like, kudos to the Damon campaign. They raised the money. They did what they needed to do. Mike Lindell snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, or whatever the proper phrase of that is. He botched it. He straight up ran the worst race you could have ran. And with the limited money he did have, he didn't even try to do anything competent.
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of it is like, Minnesota, I seen Rob said this, which I was about to say before I read it, but like Minnesota primaries generally don't have great polling in the first place, especially the DFL side always seems to be a little closer. But yeah, I'm a little surprised by some of the results, but not like overly shocked by anything. I think the governor's race is probably the biggest one. Amy Klobuchar is as close to Kim Jong-un in the United States.
Hey, that's my line.
Good. Yeah, well, she's putting up Assad numbers. I can take that one.
Wow.
But it's true. Like, I mean, I know the two guests you had before were talking about voter what's it called, enthusiasm going into November. Listen, I lived 1 block away from where they shot a guy through his door in North Minneapolis. I got what is that called? They throw it at you and it's not pepper spray.
Flashbangs.
No, it's the one that makes you choke. I forgot what it's.
Tear gas?
Tear gas. I got tear gas for the first time ever 1 block away from my house because one of my neighbors got shot by ICE. So I think, man, Republicans, you guys in Minnesota especially really know how to mess up a good thing you got going. I mean, you had walls drop out when it looked like the fraud stuff was really going to hurt us up and down the ballot. And then the president and his administration really had to go and mess that up for you guys by killing American citizens.
God forbid we enforce immigration laws and you lunatics go out and protest.
Well,
Wow.
We're here to chat about primary, not policy. That we can have that argument another day.
I'm just saying. That's what I'm saying. I think my whole argument is really, if you would have asked me in November of last year where these races were going, I would have thought, we're not going to take a trifecta. We probably have a good chance of losing the governor's race, and look at how quickly it's turned around. I mean, it's like, don't count out Minnesota Republicans to mess some things up for themselves, because they really had a good thing going there for a little bit, even though I didn't want to admit it.
If Walz stayed on the ballot, yes, but as soon as they gave him the Joe Biden treatment, I think it was a foregone conclusion that wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah, I'm interested too. Sorry, I don't mean to keep talking, but I've been listening to you guys chat, so I'm like just throwing my thoughts out there. I am interested to see like if any of the fraud stuff hits Peggy Flanagan. It seems like it does. I don't know that it will, just because of the difference in voter enthusiasm on either side. But Lisa Dameth was the best thing you guys could have come out with to not lose a bunch of seats across the state that you should be holding on to, or at least being competitive in. So that'll be really interesting to see how that happens.
I'm going to keep going back to this, not to beat a dead horse, and also not to damper Becky's optimism.
No, that's okay. I know exactly where you're going.
I remain convinced. So this is just my general take. This is what's happening on the Democratic side is very normal. They've done this for decades. They have a contested primary and they springboard out. Everyone will be coming together in some way. What will play out? So here's what's happened. What's happened over the last couple months is there's been some Republicans online that have consistently kind of blown up the infighting on the Democratic side, while also simultaneously being a part of everything you do can make Republicans be pissed off on primary night. And I just want to remind people that 5 out of 10 Republicans went to the polls tonight and voted for someone else other than Dameth. So the question I have that I'll keep going back to is, what are the Republicans doing to stay together, to keep united? And I will tell you, I remain convinced that the actions over the last few months, particularly the days after the state convention, are going to sit in the craws of a number of Republicans. And I think that I don't think that this is smooth sailing. I've received some text messages. I've received some information just on social media and others where there are going to be some upset people And I will just say, put my bias out on the table, not a bias per se, but if there's one thing that I don't think the Damith Wilson campaign has been good at, it has been winning people over. And not just winning people over to win, contested primaries, but winning the majority, 60% over. Again, 50% let's take the US Senate for the example. Peggy Flanagan, if the trend continues in the Senate race, she will have roughly 45, maybe somewhere in that 45%-ish range, somewhere in the mid 40s of people that didn't vote for her. And I think the Democrats are much better hardwired, both mindset, temperament, and others, to win those people over. I think Republicans have fought in a pretty nasty way, in a pretty unprecedented way over the last few months, particularly in the last week to 10 days. And I don't think that's going to get over very soon. And I just don't believe that there's any track record at all that anyone can present to me that Damith's campaign and the people around that are the type of people that can win people over and convert them, not just to win a plurality, but to win them over and be part of the team.
But is that unique to a candidate or campaign staff, or is that just the Republican Party in Minnesota?
Oh, no, I'm going to say this, throw my bias out to very clear. I think the Damith campaign is exceptionally bad at that. And I look at this. I mean, look at what happened at the state convention. I mean, she lost to Qualls. And in the rollout afterwards, I mean, there is a number of people. I think that I will tell you, and I stand by this, I think that there is a possibility that one of these three candidates does not get endorsed by the state central. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions because there's a difference between, and this is what I'll say about the party chairman on the DFL side. This is normal for them. It is normal for there to be contested endorsements, candidates not abiding by the endorsement, and then running through the primary. Mark Dayton was not endorsed the first time. Tim Walz was not endorsed the first time. And those both became, so what
But
happened?
That's my point, that Democrats are good at it. Republicans aren't. I don't think it's unique from my perspective. I don't think it's
I think that Republicans aren't good at it. And I think the Damith campaign in particular, because again, look at where we're at. I mean, she's going to win tonight if these numbers hold, and I think they will. 5 out of 10 Republicans wanted someone other than else. I think that's the hardest problem is because and you'll get people that will say they're not going to, if the choice is between Senator Klobuchar and Lisa Damith, Republicans are going to be united in that fight. No, they won't. Klobuchar has won by such strong margins because she has the ability to be deemed more reasonable in elections versus Republicans. And so I think the Damith campaign has its work cut out for him.
I agree. I think look, to really, I don't think Republicans are going to win this race in November, but I think to the extent that there was a path, I believe that this primary really largely needed to be avoided altogether. And so that started with a lot of the maneuvering last year, trying to get mega people on board early, to get the president on board early. And you can make the argument, well, Mike was always going to get the president's endorsement. That may have been true, but I think if you went all out to get it and you could have prevented this long drawn out $4 million effort and saved that money for a general election. I mean, those are the type of things that you look back, maybe they'll win in November, maybe they won't. But I think those are the type of things that strategically you have to think, a little bit more. And when we're in a state where we haven't won in 20 years, like those investments, like it's great they got it and were able to get the primary done, but to really win and beat a juggernaut. I mean, and Amy didn't have a primary tonight, so she was able to skate through. So she's sitting on the money, and I think we really would have benefited from a similar situation where, and again, that takes having a strong party, like we do here in Ohio, where you can, they can kind of get behind people and sort of maneuver those things to where, but our system's different, right? But I think to the extent they could have avoided some of the long drawn out fighting, that would have been in their best interest, and also winning the convention as well, because obviously that didn't help. Having a two-way primary, they would have had to even spend less money than they did, because it would have just been a much easier fight.
Let's pivot to the state auditors rate for a second. What do you think drove that? Scott Jensen, 67. I mean, Scott Jensen is going to win basically 3-1 over Nate George. How did that happen and why?
Pure name ID.
Is that what it was?
Pure name ID. I don't, Nate George is a generic enough sounding name to get 25% with a endorsed, But I mean, Scott still has a big social media presence. Like when he posts, not on everything he posts, but sometimes, I mean, you look at some of his stuff and I mean, he's talked to me about some of his emails and stuff he sends out before. So I think he has somewhat still a dedicated following. I don't know how many of those people are in the state, but certainly against a total no-name person who did nothing to spend money and raise. I mean, do you guys know, did Nate George do any advertising or send any mail? Or I'm sure it was pretty limited, right? I mean, you're not.
Well, to that point, joining us now is a candidate for state auditor who did not have a primary tonight. Adding him now, we have Jay Reeves. Jay Reeves, candidate for state auditor on the Independence Reform Party side. Jay, quiet night for you tonight. Fair to say?
Very fair. Very fair.
Jay, you're in mixed company tonight. Julius Hernandez, frequent guest to the Democratic side. Becky, of course, co-host. I'm co-host. And then Billy Grant is a Republican. We wanted to have Jay on tonight because we thought I had thought there was going to be some news in the auditor's race tonight. And I wanted to get Jay on as a candidate. He did not have a primary. Jay, your read looks like you're going to be going up against Scott Jensen in the general election. How do you feel about that?
I feel pretty good about that. I mean, I had a feeling that's what was going to happen. There was a lot of action going on behind the scenes, from my understanding, and so yeah, I was. This was kind of something we had anticipated. Scott's very well known in the state, obviously, huge name recognition, lots of money from his run as governor, and that the funding continued because I don't think he ever stopped campaigning from that time. So he was running for something the whole time, and that name recognition really helps him. So that'll be a huge challenge to overcome. And then, of course, Zach on the DFL side. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited about it.
What does a candidate do who is going to be on the general election but does not have a primary due on primary tonight?
Sit and listen to you guys all night and wondering if we're going to hear any more sounds of washers going off.
Oh man, I'm never gonna live that down.
Becky,
I have the same brand, by the way. That was me who
it's a
said
Samsung,
that.
apparently. Is it Samsung?
Samsung, yes, it is. Yep.
No, I just I was watching them, refreshing. We have other candidates that we've endorsed in other races throughout the state, so I was checking on them. A lot of that stuff hasn't come back yet. They're much smaller races, some mayors throughout the state of Minnesota and stuff. So I was just kind of keeping track on that and messaging with folks and watching some of the news coverage. Not surprising so far, in my opinion, of what's been happening. So no big surprises yet that I've really noticed.
In the perspective as a statewide candidate, does the makeup of the candidates change how you're going to plan going forward? How does your campaign pivot, change, adjust now that you know who your opponents are going to be?
Well, it was only dependent on this one since Zach was already, he was unopposed. So we have his background, and so that doesn't change anything. But for the GOP side, it does change slightly in our approach. Because these were two different candidates. One of them with an auditor background, or as he says, is an auditor, and then the other person is a doctor who wants to have an auditing background. So we'll see what happens with that. But so in my approach, it's just going to say it's not going to be anything to do with the partisanship. We're going to remain focused on what the office is and informing people and educating people what their role specifically is and how I can improve that role as a state auditor and bringing my data analytic background to it. That's my goal, is just to make sure that I inform people. I don't have a big following. I don't have a big pocketbook. I've been serving my country for the last 17 out of the 20 last 17 of the last 20 years. So I haven't been here in Minnesota with a big following. So my goal is to try and get out there, grassroots effort, combine, unite some of those disenfranchised Republicans and disenfranchised DFLers that want to join the fight. And we'll see what happens.
Jay, just not to put you on the spot, but if the breakdown would get a couple other candidates, would you be interested in coming on and not necessarily a debate, but having a discussion with some of your opponents? Would you be interested in doing that?
Would be great.
What are you hearing? Again, you're not on you weren't on the primary tonight, but what were you hearing from voters are the top issues as you're racing around?
Number one is always the fraud and how I'm going to stop that. A lot of times too, this is really when I was at a lot of the fairs and things like that, and I'd have these individual conversations. It's the polarizing side out there is really, really hard. And in this race as a state auditor, I believe that people are going to gravitate towards an independent person in this role. So the vibe out there is, well, at least you're not a Democrat or at least you're not a Republican. So I can consider you as a candidate. So some of that is out there. But the main thing that people are talking about truly is the fraud and how I have a vision or what my vision is to improve that. And if I'm willing to work with any of the other people to combat the fraud. And as an independent, of course, I would.
I just want to be clear, you're anti-fraud.
Yeah, I'm pretty much anti-fraud.
Your agenda is anti-fraud.
Anti-fraud. I'm not for fraud in any
You're
kind of
not
way.
pro-fraud.
Nope. And I'm for accountability and transparency, and anybody who is involved in it should pucker up pretty quick. If I become the state auditor, they should pucker up real quick.
What's going to be your approach at the state fair?
I'll be out there every single day as much as I can all day long. I want to get with a bunch of as many media folks that are out there, walk around, talk to people, have the conversations. We're trying to see if there's other events going on too. So to mainly, we're going to want to be there every day. That's going to be the focus. But there are other events too that are going to be throughout the state that we're going to have to hit in some locations, because there are a lot of folks that don't go to the state fair that still need representation. So the goal is to not just 100% focus on the state fair, because there will be about 2 million people out there at one point, but I can't talk to 2 million people. So I need to get myself out into the grassroots efforts too, because a lot of people just don't want to go to the state fair. It's expensive. It's hot. People don't like the people all the time. So we want to go wherever we can meet them too.
That's great. And it is true. The people that don't go to the state fair they still deserve representation. But we can all agree, even Julius can agree, that if they don't go to the state fair, it should be open to debate as to whether they get representation, right?
Of course.
Speaking of the state fair, corn dog, pronto pup, which side do you go?
I'm a corn dog guy, but I used to work at the state fair years ago. I had a job out there. I worked in the brownie booth, right across from the milk jug there, right across from the milk you get it for $1. So you buy the brownie and then you go across and you get the milk for $1. I worked there, and then I worked, I think I did some mini donuts there, worked there for a little bit. And that was one of my jobs one summer. I enjoyed that a lot.
I also worked at the state fair. I worked at the Boschwitz booth, selling milk. Okay. In 95, worked out at the booth selling milk, which was a great experience. Jay, tell again our listeners what we have here for another couple minutes. Your background, what sets you apart? We had such a great discussion with you on the podcast. Yeah. And you have such a deep background. And where can people find out more about your campaign?
Sure. Yeah, I'm an East Side guy. Grew up on the East Side of St. Paul. Lived in the projects. Lower middle class kind of guy. As an adult, I had some union jobs, things like that. We also, one of the things that was the major part of my life was my 17 years of military service, where I started off enlisted and then got a direct commission after I got a degree, and then served as an officer for just over 10 and a half years. And I retired as a major. But during that time, I was a data analyst at the Defense Health Agency, where I created the Defense Health Agency COVID-19 dashboard for the entire Department of Defense. The beginning part of it anyways, until they took it over with different analytics. And I retired in 2023 after a cancer diagnosis in 2022. So I got stage 4 cancer, presumed to be from the burn pits in Iraq, but I'm healthy, I'm good. My wife and I live in Victoria. We have 6 kids total together. It's a wonderfully merged family. And I got an active duty son who's graduating from drill sergeant school next week.
Wow.
He's going to be stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia, coming up in October. And then people can find me pretty much online. I'm there. You can call me. You can text me. I'm easy to get a hold of. I usually always have my phone, and it goes through my hearing aids so I can hear everybody all the time. So, but my website's jreeves for FORMN, jreeves4mn.com. You can reach me there too.
I just want to say before Jay goes that I will say to you, I have absolutely enjoyed our conversations, enjoyed the podcast episode. Promoting him tonight was something that I wanted to do. Even though he wasn't on the ballot tonight, I wanted to make sure that we gave him some time, because I think it is important. And I think on some of these down ballot races, when there's going to be so much going on at the top, it's something that I want to make sure we can help promote and do. And Jay, we'd love to have you back again yourself, and we'll reach out. Don't like to do production on air, but we'll reach out, and hopefully we can get, with the other candidates to maybe come on and talk, and we can have a thoughtful discussion and help elevate the race. And that's something that I promised you that I wanted to do, and it's something I hope we can continue to talk about. Okay, sir?
Thanks so much and I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm always up for any conversations. And this race is going to be very, very important for the future of Minnesota, and I'm here for it. So whatever I can do.
Jay, I know he kept you up late, but we got over 16,000 people watching us right now. So I'm glad we were able to get you on in. Okay, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Billy's back. Billy, we just spoke to Jay Reeves, candidate on the Reform Forward Party side.
East Sider, yeah.
State side, and then he's getting amped up for his race against Zach. Say it, Becky. How do you say it, Julius? Zach
Filipovich.
and
Flipovich.
and then Scott Jensen. Dr. Scott
You
Jensen.
gotta say that one with like a little bit of an Italian accent. Filipovich.
There you go.
Filipovich.
Yeah.
Julius, we've gotten some big numbers in the Senate race on the DFL side. Flanagan is close to 60%.
Yeah, it's well, I think every major outlet has called it. But yeah, Peggy Flanagan is about to win by 110,000 votes, it looks like, with 153 out still remaining. Some interesting races here. Ron Latz won in a very contested primary, which is really interesting. I'm a little shocked by that. I'm a little shocked by the gap, to be quite frank with you. 100,000 votes is pretty crazy, but Hennepin County has gone through a lot in the last couple of months here, and that's an understatement in itself. But
She's just shy of Flanagan's just shy of 30% ahead in Hennepin County. I mean, it's a massive gap there.
Well, and when you look at like some of these like races, it is really interesting because Ron Latz is more of the quote unquote establishment candidate. Like you have in the Hennepin County attorney's race, the two people going up now, it looks like, are going to be Cedric Frazier, who's the state rep, and then Anders Folk, who's the former acting U.S. attorney. So it's interesting. I mean, here's what I'll say. I have allegiances in this race. Obviously, everyone who knows me knows that. I think failing up in Minnesota is a unique factor for a lot of people that run for office. And it doesn't happen a lot of other places. But, man, Operation Metro Surge really, really, really fired up a lot of people who don't generally turn out in primaries. So that's the voters have spoken.
And do you think that that is the single most motivating factor for tonight's results?
For sure. I mean, I think you guys all know me well, and I think people who watch this podcast and have for a while probably know me well. Like, I'm a big fan of not having one party rules in states. I wish Republicans were way more competitive in the state, because it would push my party to be a little bit more normal sometimes, if whatever that standard is. But I lived a block away from where I shot someone and I got tear gas the same night. And
Wait,
that
you didn't wait a second. You didn't shoot someone.
I did not shoot someone.
I believe you said you
ice.
shot-
Ice. Sorry, I meant ice.
Sorry.
Ice shot someone.
Okay, just to be clear.
Through their door. And so it's like, I found myself in an incredibly radicalized state after that, and very angry at the stuff that was going on in our city. So I am surprised that the gap is so large. I think Angie Craig is a phenomenal congresswoman, and I think she's been very effective. And I think it's a loss for the state of Minnesota to not have her as a representative anymore. But, elections are elections. People speak. And like, there are things that amp people up more than others. And I think this was a unique situation to our state. And what I think it shows is like, man, Republicans are going to pay dearly in November. This is like, it is really fascinating to watch this, like how much it played out in a state that generally runs purple for the most part, besides statewide races. So, yeah.
Billy, your read.
Yeah, I also think, like, if you look at most primaries like this, whether it's Republican or Democrat, when you have a member of Congress who's running against more of a progressive firebrand who has enough money to at least get their message out, which Flanagan did, when there's a big central base like Minneapolis, Hennepin County, the progressive can generally mobilize in those type of races if there's enough resources. So I think, and it's tough when you're a congresswoman. I know Angie had a lot of name ID from being on a lot of tough fights in the Twin Cities broadcast market, but with that was a lot of the positions that she had to moderate, and that ultimately I think made it harder for her to win a primary when you've had tough general elections and you've had to basically be as much of a centrist as you can. So it's tough when you're then running in a primary and then you have to basically turn around and try and run as far to the left as you can. So that definitely was difficult for her. And people underestimated Flanagan, I think, as well, and her ability to, her fundraising wasn't the best, but, she had enough outside support and she got enough money on air that she could get her message out.
I think you mean Julius did.
Yeah, exactly.
Her like a couple of factors I think that probably played into that. Her burn rate was really bad. Like, she was raising a lot of money. She was raising a decent amount of money, but she was spending almost all of it, and she didn't have a lot. She relied on a lot of outside people to come in and make her case for her. Like, I think if there's one thing that can be said about Peggy Flanagan, she's winning by 20 points, and this might sound counterintuitive to that, but like, her herself, she is not a great campaigner. She got boosted up, I think, by a lot of different factors, but ultimately, again, she's winning by 100,000 votes. Like, that's a win is a win, and that's a pretty decisive win. So
I also think for her, like, to her credit, social media matters a lot now.
For sure.
Like,
yeah.
When you treat your social media channel like a TV channel, which she does and she always has, that counts for a lot. And so I think she probably was able to give herself more of a boost, there, despite I agree with you on everything else. I don't think she's the most amazing campaigner, but I will say she's very good on social media, and she treats that like she should, and that definitely was an asset.
We do have a surprise tonight, which is the Republican endorsed candidate in Congress lost. Tyler Bass won the primary in the 3rd CD, which literally makes no sense other than upholding my long belief on election nights that something surprising always happens.
Who was the first candidate?
It was Quinton. The guy's name sounds like a law firm. Quinton Whitrock was the endorsed candidate, so he lost. Wow. So, what just a fascinating night.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked too, and I will say, I know this is a Minnesota-based podcast, but I'm looking at I'm watching the results from Wisconsin. where everyone thought the Democratic Socialist on the Democrat side was going to win. And she's basically, it's 39.9% to 39.8. She's down 0.1%. Our neighbor just to the east. So it's really interesting to see like how there's such a shift in the Democratic Party. I know we have our infighting, and that's obviously a big story going around this election cycle, but it's fascinating to see like in a state in Minnesota where you have someone like Andrew Craig who turned a purple seat into a blue one, basically get her butt kicked in a Senate primary, and then you have the state right next to us that's in a very, very tight race between the moderate and the socialist. So, but even again, Ron Latz winning, and then he didn't just win; he won by like a good margin. So, man, Minnesota always finds ways to surprise you. That's for sure.
Certainly do.
What's your read on prediction markets on this election cycle?
Trash. I think prediction markets are trash. They steal your money. What were the prediction markets even for? Wasn't Lindell up until today, basically?
Over the last couple of days.
Listen, I'm not like a fan of prediction markets by any means. I think they're stupid, and I think people should not use them. But I'm not going to advocate for the government to step in and do that. But like, they've been wrong on a lot of races this cycle too. They haven't been particularly super correct. It's probably like a 50-50 split if I had to imagine based on what I've seen. But like, people use Polymarket as some sort of poll now, and it's kind of weird.
So I want to explain that because there's been some misinterpretation of what I had written, which doesn't surprise me because that's what people do on social media. So pretty consistently throughout this race. And if you listen to our podcast, Becky and I had said that it was a real coin flip as to who could win. And it was very close in the governor's race. What was surprising to me was the fact that KSTP had said that it was a close race, yet these prediction markets were out there saying that Mike Lindell was the clear favorite off the chart. And that didn't make a ton of sense to me. And then what happened very quickly over the course of 48 hours, and I don't think it was done organically, was there was a huge market swing towards Damith. And I think one of two things happened. People realized that they could short a little bit of Damith stock. And then I think Damith's people started buying stock, which I think the second thing happened. There's no question that that's what happened. That does not mean that the analysis about the overinflated Lindell numbers didn't make sense, which was the point of what I was making, which is that this doesn't make any sense. And on our previous podcast episodes, we had discussed, like, I don't know what to make of these prediction markets. Again, I don't put money in them. But to me, it did make a ton of sense that the betting market, because I understand how the stock market works, that there was like, Mike Lindell is at 85% at one point. That didn't make any sense. It also didn't make any sense that it swung that quickly the way Damith's people did. And so clearly that was an effort. And again, the lesson here is prediction markets are not, these prediction markets don't necessarily predict how it's going to turn out. Sometimes they do. But there's a difference between the market correcting itself, the market kind of correcting itself organically, or the market forcing itself to be corrected based on some astroturfing. And there's no question that's what was done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think like betting markets just in general as a form of, if you want to make money on them or lose money on them, I guess good for you. But I think they do have a way of swaying the electorate in a way too. Like if I'm an uninformed voter, which I'm not now, but like if I were to open that, I always use my mom as an example. If I asked my mom to open Kalshi or however you pronounce it, and she saw that, she would just bet on the person that has the highest chance of winning versus like any informed kind of backing to that. And that maybe changes the way people vote too. But we've seen like a decent amount of regulate. I don't know if this is happening in Minnesota. I think this is happening in Minnesota, but there's some regulation going on with prediction markets and legislation. I think here in Colorado, they're kind of doing the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, they are not a great indicator of elections. Again, like they had this Francesca Hong in Wisconsin winning like 80%, and she's
Right.
down 0.2% right now. We still got a long way to go. So I mean, it's just not a great indicator. If you want to lose money on them, go ahead, but don't take them as fact, because they usually are not. So
Billy, let's get some final takes here.
Yeah,
What's kind of the lay of the land as you see it?
I think, going into a really tough general election, Republicans have to be realistic about recalibrating the messaging and like being as aggressive as possible on fundraising and finding allies that are going to be interested in this type of a race. Like what industries might be interested in participating, because I can tell you the RGA is likely not looking at this race as a top target with the resource allocation they have right now. So who's going to come in and help you win this thing? And like I said earlier, the challenge you have with having tapped out so many donors and so many people to win the primary is then how do you go refill the coffers? I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And then I think, again, finding the proper way to balance mobilizing your base for turning out and having a compelling message that gets them motivated to vote versus, how do you get a swing voter in a tough midterm environment? That's going to be challenging. So the money's going to be tough, and that's going to be tough. And it's, both clocks ticking, like got to start happening right away. So I think those two things have to be immediately addressed as a top priority going forward. And then, we talked about the unity stuff, I think, at length, but the unity comes with having a compelling message. I mean, people will unify if you run a good campaign. So I think taking care of both those two things generally will take care of the unity problem if you inspire people and run a great race. And, so that's their task.
Julius, how do you see things going forward as we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Amy Klobuchar is going to win in November with Putin numbers. I don't think anyone could have convinced me otherwise of that. I'd probably put money on that on the prediction markets. I wouldn't make much, but I'd probably still put money.
Yeah, exactly.
I think listen, man, I think there's actually some bright spots here for Republicans. Okay. And my Democratic colleagues are going to disagree with me. But I'm a glass half full kind of guy when I feel like it. And if I'm Republicans, I'm thinking, okay, you got the ticket you wanted to at least maybe mitigate some losses across the board with the state Senate, state House, maybe. Lisa Damath is like not particularly a great candidate in my opinion, but she's way miles better than Lindell. So I think that helps. Tafoya can obviously fundraise. I think she has some things she can hit Lieutenant Governor Flanagan on. One race that people haven't really talked about, and I think it's really interesting, I haven't seen too much outside of it besides the Democratic primary, is I think CD2 is an interesting race for Republicans. And I think that because Matt Little, who I have no taste for in any way, shape, or form, is a 3-time loser, a perpetual loser. And Eric Pratt is not particularly like polarizing in any capacity. So I think that'll be an interesting race. Obviously, they're going to spend a lot of money to keep that seat. The Democrats are, and it's the right move. But it could be an interesting one to look out for. And I think Scott Jensen winning the primary for auditor is really interesting because he has the name recognition, and Zach Filipovich, or however you say his name, does not. And it could be interesting to see if they invest any money in that seat. I think the fraud stuff is really still on the mind of voters, and maybe if you're a Republican and you can like kind of bring some of that back to the forefront of the conversation, you probably maybe take a seat there. But obviously, I think most of us who have been doing this for a while, professionally at least, are looking at this like it's a blue year where, Democrats are probably going to take almost every seat that is competitive. So it'll be an
interesting point, though. Like it would be Republicans should go all in on the auditor's race.
Yeah, I think
stuff, but that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're running with a guy who has name recognition. Now, listen, I just want to make clear too. I went to his Twitter when we were talking about this. Stop stop tweeting about trans kids. It's honest to God. You're running for auditor. Shut up. Take his Twitter away. Genuinely. Every campaign I've ever worked on, we've taken the candidate's Twitter.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I don't have a great track record on Twitter myself, but we take them from candidates because they're the ones running. Okay. So it's like, take this dude's Twitter away and talk about fraud and talk about the state programs in the state that are not working. And maybe you have a chance at winning. But I swear on my life, if I see Scott Jensen tweeting about litter boxes or trans kids, you people are going to lose. But genuinely, like, if you guys want to break a 20-year losing streak on a statewide level, auditor's the race that you're going to do it. So, you know, and I think if you guys had a better candidate for attorney general, there'd be an interesting conversation there too. But auditor, I think, is really where you can maybe put some money in and come close. I mean, Ryan Wilson did it and, you know, didn't have a ton of money.
Conversation is not closed on AG. I'm an advisor for the Republican Attorneys General Association. They're still very much interested. I think they're waiting to see how things shook out tonight. And
yeah,
you know,
I agree with you though. Like, I think Keith Ellison has really, like, he's made some missteps. I think he like just has some stuff he has to work on in this fraud stuff, especially in his connection to it. Whatever people think about it, whatever side you're on, is not a good look to voters. So if Minnesota Republicans, like, they got what they needed tonight to at least have some sort of glimmer of hope in the long run. And I don't say that a lot about Republicans in the state. So,
Becky, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. Largely, I think that, we've had a lot of conversations about midterm elections and the party in power not doing the best. So historically, just on its face, when we look at that, it doesn't look like it's going to be a red tsunami by any means. But I think that we have a lot of opportunity. And I think that as we head towards the general, I am excited to see what we see from these candidates, from Tafoya, from Dameth, from Jensen and Tad Jude. I think we have some really smart, articulate folks on the ballot who hopefully can be a little cohesive in some messaging. I think there is a lot of opportunity still on fraud, especially with Flanagan and Ellison still in the race. And I think it just takes a matter of really pushing hard on that. I think a good point that was made earlier was on the policy side and what Klobuchar has done, especially when it comes to fraud versus the Republicans in the race. And so I think that's something I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of. And then, I think debates are going to be wild. And so I think, watching that as it comes out, it obviously, Klobuchar is a behemoth. We've talked about this many, many times. Her work, her name ID, her fundraising. I mean, she's tough to go up against in general, but with all of those things on her side. So I think it's just, we have a lot of wait and see. And again, historically, it's not looking great for the Republican side of things. But crazier things have happened. And I think that, the ticket that we have is the most beneficial for those down ballot races when it comes to the legislature, which I know we'll start talking about a little bit more as we move forward towards the general and how some of those races are shaping up, and if we're going to get a split again. Michael, what are your thoughts?
I think tonight is interesting. I think that we see that I think it's a tale of two campaigns. And two political parties. I think that we've seen in the last few months the Democratic Party unite around some policy matters related to ICE and other things that really seems to propel them tonight. I think that my issue that I'll be interested in looking at is what is the partisan breakdown between the intensity on the Democratic side versus the Republican. Who's more motivated? And again, elections are about winning and motivating your base. And I said this after the state convention. I'd be interested to see who was united coming out of the state convention. And I'll be very interested to see what type of unity effort happens on the Republican side to propel them going forward. Because there's a lot more going on with this race than I think the average person understands. And I think one of the advantages of having a podcast is to break that down and get into some of the metrics and to see what's actually going on. But we'll see. I think it's a very interesting. I will agree with Julius that I think that, and to you, Becky, a little bit, which is I think the Republicans, I think there will be a perception that the Republicans strengthen their hand tonight, and that they put their best step forward. I think the jury is still out on that, and I think what it remains to be seen. But we'll have to go from there. And I appreciate we're up to 17,500 people that are watching right now. Julius and Billy and to Becky, I thank you guys for doing this tonight. It was a real treat. It was a historic night. And we'll be back to break it down further in the coming days.
Sounds great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having
running the show.
Yeah,
Great job.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.